William Morrow and Harper Audio present When the Moon Hatched, a novel by Sarah A. Parker, performed by Sarah Mullo Christensen and Fajer Al-Casey. A note before we begin. This book contains explicit content and dark elements that may be triggering for some. For a full list of warnings, please skip to the end credits. For a glossary, a family tree, and more, don't forget to download the accompanying enhancement PDF from your audiobook provider. For those who feel small and quiet, spread those wings and roar.
The world began with 5. First was Kalis, god of ether, invisible to the naked eye. The empty space nobody thought about. Where matter formed, he was simply shoved aside. His baritone song was so full of substance, yet lacked it entirely. A lonely echo that haunted the empty space between near and distant suns, inaudible in its depth, no matter how loud he sang. Desperate to be noticed, it was he who offered an empty canvas for the others to fill. Boulder, god of ground, sculpted the sphere with one belted bellow, building a sturdy globe that did not spin, a world half bathed in sunlight, sprinkled with a rich ripple of rust-colored sand, the other half eternally dunked in shadow so thick it seeped into the stone and cast it black. With more blunt and droning words, Boulder sculpted the terrain, creating dips, dollops, and cracks in the world, forging a wall that cut through the fade, where sunlight and shadow refused to meet, the sky a forever splash of pink, purple, and gold. The goddess of water came next. Rain fell upon the ground in a billion yearning teardrops of unrequited love, puddling in Boulder's dips, filling his gorges with her gushing affections. Upon the shaded side, she descended in a patter of heavy flakes, dusting the sharp mountain ranges in a frosty hug. Her love was a screaming torrent, the deep, gut-wrenching wail of an avalanche, the near silent cry of sprinkling rain. Her mournful song was so unlike that of her sister Claude, goddess of air, who hinged on the precipice of immeasurable madness. Her voice was a ribbon of silk, soft to touch, unless it turned to the side and slit you with its edge. Her whispered words swept past branches laden with leaves, tilling them into a flirty dance. Her violent shrieks ripped around sharp corners at a voracious speed, simply because she liked the sound. Unable to stand rain's somber still, Claude's gusty howls often turned the lough into a heaving mass that dumped upon the shore like a drum. Ignos was a glutton for Claude. The god of fire feasted on her, consumed her, loved her so much he could not breathe without her. His searing song was one of ferocious hunger and impassioned greed, but Claude could not be tamed by his rabid affections, even as he blazed jungles and gave her smoke to dance within, even as he melted bits of Boulder's stone until they were molten rivers of red, desperate to woo Claude with volcanic blasts that shook the sky. Bound to his mournful solitude, Kalis watched this all. jealous of the other creators for their ability to be seen, touched, or heard, but thankful to be part of something. Anything. And he watched in quiet wonder as, upon this lush and fertile canvas he'd gifted his emptiness, life bloomed. A various cacophony of folk who littered the land and snow and sand, some with hearing sharper than the tips of their ears, making them privy to the 4 other elemental songs, a number of whom learned their languages, spoke them, found power in them. Others fell upon a silver book some say Caelus wrote in his desperation to be heard, who found a different form of power in those runes nobody could read or pronounce, discovering that the strange markings could be wielded, could mend bones, charm blood, glamour objects. Many beings filled all corners of the world, but none the creators were more proud of than the great winged beasts that lorded over the sky. The dragons. Upon the seemingly uninhabitable crown of the burn, where the sun's harsh rays bubbled skin into fleshy welts, the saber scythes thrived. Big, bulky beasts with black and bronze and ruddy scales, with ferocious aptitudes that could not be matched. They made Gondra their spawning ground. Some folks were brave enough to venture close, to raid a nest and snatch an egg. Brave or stupid. Less volatile than their distant kin, the molten maws found their home in the Fade, in Bog Gith, a foggy scrap of marshland that gobbled almost everything in muddy sulfuric burps. Their honed beaks were sharp enough to slash, their claws just as severe, veiled with feathers as colorful as the ever-vibrant sky in their part of the world. No 2 molten maws bore the same glorious palette. To steal a molten maw's egg, one also needed to be brave or stupid. But perhaps a little less. Netherin, however, was almost impossible to raid, the chosen spawning ground of the ethereal and cunning moon plumes. Being farthest from the sun, Netherin was the darkest crown of the shade, bearing a cold so deep it could turn the blood of most common folk slow and sludgy. But not the moon plumes, with their luminous, leathery skin so chill to the touch, with their long, silky tails and eyes a crush of glitter and ink. Tucked amongst snow and ice and a hungry quiet that swallowed sounds, then spat them out like a warning roar, the moon plumes flourished, growing in number, strength, and brilliance. Only those as unhinged as Cloud or bearing enough power to protect themselves would attempt to steal a moon plume egg. Most failed, consumed by the fearsome, thrashing beasts or the hostile land. Some succeeded, a celebrated few who used the dragons to wage wars for sprouting kingdoms. But as castles grew taller than mountains, and as kings and queens decorated their crowns with bigger, sparklier jewels, so too did folk learn how to shed dragon blood. For many moon plumes, molten maws, and saber scythes, their eternal lives were slashed. The creators did not expect their beloved beasts to sail skyward upon their end. For many of them to plant themselves just beyond gravity's grip, curl into balls and calcify, littering the sky with tombstones, with moons. They certainly did not expect those moons to fall not long after they found their lofty perch, for them to collide with the world in a clash of splintering doom that threatened to devastate everything that had come to be. It took 7 moonfalls before Cloud, Rain, Ignos, and Boulder realized Caelus was to blame, that his empty space, which yearned to be filled, was strong enough to displace a dragon from its resting place and rip it from the sky. It took them yet another moonfall to devise a plan to save the world they loved so much. Wielding empty promises and faithless vows, they lured Caelus into their trap and captured him. Subdued him. They sang their whipping, burning, breaking songs, mincing Caelus's essence into pieces small enough to trap in a cage of ebony crystal no larger than a pip, henceforth known as the Ether Stone. Threads of his silver cloak tore free as he thrashed and fought, but the other creators did not bother to round up the scraps, leaving them to tether to both poles of the world. A luminous aurora that spun around the globe, giving folk something to track their days and slumber time. Caelus himself was set within a sterling diadem embellished with a collection of runes that bore malicious strength, enough to keep him trapped within the stone for eternity, so long as the runes had something to feed on. A guardian. A mighty Fey warrior, known for his strength and wisdom, was bestowed a gift from the creators themselves. Power immense enough that he was able to host the Ether Stone upon his brow and keep Caelus contained. A gift that passed down his familial line like skipping stones. Many aurora cycles passed, and more moons littered the sky. Stayed there. Peace eventually reigned, despite a slew of tragedies and ill-timed deaths that swallowed the Ether Stone's catastrophic origin, its very meaning for existence becoming a scrambled myth passed around campfires or sung to babes to hush their fussing cries. Until one aurora rise, for the first time in more than 5 million phases, another moon fell.
Rave. Chapter 1. 5,165 phases after stone. I curl my shoulders forward, crumbling my posture into something that appears trodden, scared. Rounding a corner, I step onto the stairwell's bottom landing, chased by a parchment lark that flutters so close I'm surprised it doesn't nudge at me to pluck it from the air. As I twirl the thin iron ring on my middle finger, my gaze climbs the heavily armored guard blocking the gloomy tunnel ahead. Arms crossed, his shaved head almost brushing the curved ceiling, a flock of parchment larks nuzzling the door at his back. He's twice my size, boasting a scowl that appears to have permanently dented his face. His disapproving leer comes to rest on the nick sliced into my left ear, up near the tapered tip, like somebody with a tiny mouth bit a chunk from the outer shell. My clip.
No token, no entry,
he grinds out, immediately dismissing me as a lesser, a null, someone who doesn't hear any of the 4 elemental songs. I reach into my pocket, retrieving the stone token embossed on both sides with the prestigious club's insignia, a maw of stalactites biting in from all angles. Forging the slightest tremble, I hand it over, feeling the male's probing perusal cut me up and down as he flips the token, his blue armor clanking with the motion. I'm curious to know why he lets the larks flock the door rather than allow them straight in, but Rave is the outspoken one, and I'm not Rave right now. I'm Kamori Daffodon, I say, tone soft and submissive. Traveling bard.
From where?
Orig. A wall settlement I've never been to. Not that it'll stop me from rattling on about it if he asks for specifics. Preparation is my armor. Don it or die. He inspects the token, handing it back with a gruff,
No veils.
I glance up at him from beneath a blaze of feather-tipped lashes. Part of my act. I'm part of the scheduled entertainment. I retrieve a roll of parchment from my pocket and nudge it toward him. I was warned about the no veil rule, which is why I've only covered the bottom half of my face. Scowling, he unravels the scroll, his beady leer raking over my letter of hire so painfully slow I start to get a crick in my neck, impatience gnawing at me. Finally, his eyes widen with recognition.
Oh, you're the stand-in.
I offer a shy, demure nod when all I really want to do is bang his head against the wall. Hard. He re-rolls my scroll and hands it back, stepping aside to open the door.
3rd level. Mind the waif. It's always extra hungry this late in the Aurora cycle.
My shiver is far from fake. I move into the Hungry Hollow's warm, smoky embrace, attacked by a rush of dense musk and the undertow of sulfur, the door banging shut behind me and the flock of dispersing parchment larks. Through a dark tunnel, I emerge at the pinched mouth of a vast, lofty cavern the shape of a stony lung. A swoop of steps leads me onto one of the many paths that web through a cluster of luminous springs, steam rising from their turquoise depths. Folks are draped against their steps, heads tipped while they languish in the lapping warmth. A pretty paradise for those who wield enough power or political sway to keep themselves on the cushioned side of the crown. I huff out a bitter laugh. Here, it's easy to pretend our colorful kingdom isn't nesting on a bed of bones. A freestanding staircase leads to the 2nd floor, supported by mossy pillars. I head for it, weaving along the labyrinth of paths when a waft of steam congeals into a pale, lanky creature with eyes like ebony jewels. Shit, I mutter, pausing. Head swiveling unnaturally, the waif looks right at me, sniffs the air, then releases a gluttonous gasp. Well, 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 isn't your soul a plump, juicy thing? How kind of you to say. I'll just be on my way. There are screaming spirits desperate to speak with you. How about a small suckle of your soul? The creature asks, and I swear it sounds like it's salivating. Then you can hear everything they have to say. No fucking thank you. I'll pass. Heartily. Seeming to ignore my objection, it flits forward, gathering wafts of steam it uses to stretch in my direction, vaporous fingers reaching. I spin on my heel and hurry down another path, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Looking over my shoulder, I spot the creature, now hunched over a male lazing against a spring's edge, sucking something shadowed from between his parted lips. A shiver nettles my skin. I quietly thank the creators that waifs are rare, haunting only drapes of mist where they nibble souls in exchange for messages from obliging dead. Can't think of anything worse. I'm certain the spirits so desperate to speak with me have nothing nice to say. Not that I can blame them. Thankfully, the creepy soul nibblers are easily distracted. I dash up a staircase, rising well above the reaching fingers of steam. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses come to me as I emerge onto the 2nd level scattered with scrippy tables. Folks are gathered about, puffing smoke sticks, drinking sparkly spirits, game shards fanned close to their chests. Dice scatter, piles of dragon bloodstone shoved from hand to hand. I cast my furtive gaze over their attire, some garbed in colorful, gem-encrusted gowns. Others wear finely tailored coats, feathered shapes barbered into shorn hairstyles, elemental beads hanging from their lobes, a boastful token of their ability to hear the different elemental songs. Red for Ignos, blue for Rain, brown for Boulder, clear for Claude. Beads aside, you can usually pick a high-ranking Fade elemental from the other side of a room, those who boast more than 10 colors on a single outfit, as if it'll make them mighty like the vibrant dragons that lord this kingdom's skies. The great molten maws. Funny, since they'd be the first to bleed the beasts if the bloodstone mine ever ran dry. I'm halfway up a thin staircase chipped into the back wall when somebody tall, broad, and cloaked charges down from above. I pause, unable to see much of his face, bar his strong jaw brushed in a dark, well-shaped beard, his cloak's hood casting everything else in shadow. He doesn't slow, just keeps stalking down the stairs despite the fact that I'm dressed in a bold, bright red gown impossible to miss. I almost grit my teeth, remembering the metal cap coating my back molar just in time to avoid an impromptu activation of my secret weapon. He barely fits on the staircase himself, meaning moving past each other is going to be a tight shuffle. Lovely. Typical elemental bullshit, only thinking about themselves. Sighing, I curl my shoulders further forward and step to the side, reminding myself that I'm Kamori Daffodone, traveling bard from Aurig. I'm trodden, scared, and I'm absolutely not here to accidentally trip this male and watch him tumble down the stairs. Absolutely not. Back pressed to the wall, I keep my eyes down and wait for him to squeeze past, his heavy steps growing closer. So close I'm struck with a smoky musk pinched with the smell of freshly split stone, softened with notes of something buttery. My breath catches, then shudders free, as if unwilling to part with the dense, luscious scent that might just be one of the best smells I've ever inhaled. He steps to the side, edging past. Pauses. I'm caught in his shadow like a flame in the dark, my heart pumping hard and fast, nudging up my throat with each lengthy second that ticks by. Why isn't he moving? I sidestep farther up the stairs, edging free of his atmosphere. Excuse me. Places to be, hands to sever. A dense, grated sound crumbles out of him, like it wrestled loose. The air shifts. I shift with it. Whipping around, I snatch his wrist with the speed of a lightning strike. Tension clogs the air, my gaze dropping to his large, heavily scarred hand, outstretched, paused mid-motion, as if he were just about to grab my veil and rip it free. The asshole. Though I can't see his eyes, I feel his penetrating stare with such probing intensity my lungs pack full of stones, the trail of his attention traversing to the rounded nick in my ear. Back to my eyes again. Sharp words gather on my tongue like thorns that I'm so tempted to spit at him. Then I remember that folk who stand up to high-ranking elementals end up as dragon chow. I swallow the words instead, something that never feels good, no matter how often I do it. Loosening my grip, I dip my head and shuffle back a few steps, only stopping once I'm high enough that I'm looking down on the male. Far enough away that I'm less tempted to punch him in the throat for thinking he could unveil me. Apologies, I bite out, trying to sound submissive, failing miserably. The veil is part of my act. Silence ensues, thick like a tacky syrup. Move, rave. Easing free of his reach, I spin, hurrying up the staircase. I don't look back, flashing my scroll in token at the second wave of stone-faced guards, one of whom breaks away to escort me toward the stage. I'm led into the shadowy den, engulfed in the scent of peat smoke and mead, struck by the dramatic shift in atmosphere. Stone fangs jut down from the ceiling, cutting the space into arched segments brushed in rusty firelight spilling from blazing sconces. Dimly lit booths line the outer walls, bracketed with heavy curtains offering privacy for those who seek it. Null servers glide through the space, carrying trays topped with mugs of mead and other foggy beverages, dishing them out to jovial elementals gathered around stone tables pocked about the place. Tucked in the guard's shadow, I cut a shrewd glance over the eclectic patrons, frustration chewing at my nerves when I don't see the face I'm looking for. Please be in one of the booths. The guard leads me toward a central dais crowned by numerous stalagmites that resemble the bars of a cage, and I almost laugh, only because I couldn't imagine anything more morbidly appropriate. A thin, fine-boned female sits on a stool within, holding a white fiddle etched in luminous runes that probably encourage its sound to carry. She wears a simple, full-bustled gown similar to mine, but blue, and much looser around the discreet swell of her babe-laden abdomen. Eyes closed, she carves a melancholy tune, while flakes of white light fall from the arched ceiling like a spill of snow. They settle on her gush of pale hair, extinguishing. Thanking the guard, I step up and perch on the stool beside the musician, her song reaching a lilting crescendo while I search for an amplifying stick. "They're Rooney's working on it," she whispers, lowering her fiddle, looking at me through piercing green eyes framed with blue feather-tipped lashes. "It was cutting in and out last cycle." "Ah. Shouldn't be long. I'm Levy, by the way. Kamori Daffodon, traveling bard from Auric." She flashes me a friendly smile that melts a little when her stare snags on something behind me. My heart leaps into my throat as a red-haired male strides past, weaving between the crowd, dressed in an immaculate sanguine coat, the color a perfect match to his red elemental bead on boastful display. Relief prickles through me, eager anticipation making my hands clench and unclench. Tarek Relakin. He takes us in, a hungry leer that slithers over my corset-clad bust before he continues toward a booth, 3 other males lounging within. Leaving the curtain open, he pours into animated conversation, sliding the occasional glance my way. Half-lidded looks that paint me out to be a well-presented piece of meat he'd love to gnaw on. "I see you, asshole." I catch sight of the cloaked male I encountered on the stairs, now moving through the dusky space. My heart plummets. He navigates past other patrons, my mind tangling into a messy knot while he makes for an empty booth at the back of the room. He was in such a hurry earlier when he almost barreled over me on his way down the stairs. Now he's back. Why? Business? Curiosity? Or did he catch the wrong impression from me on the stairs? Creators, is that why he's come back in? Because he likes slumming it with nulls and he's hoping for an easy lay? His head turns in my direction, gaze sweeping across the upper half of my face like a warm, soft-bristled brush, stiffening the air between us. I swallow a groan. I fought hard to have this operation approved. It means everything to me. If that asshole ruins our carefully laid plans, we may not get another chance for who knows how long, assuming another attempt is even approved. "You new, honey? I haven't seen you here before." Forcing my regard to soften, I look at Levy, her null clip evident in the ear poking free of her luscious mane. "Just standing in." "I see." She passes a glance around the room, lips barely moving as she whispers, "That male with red hair who just walked by? His name is Lord Tarek Relakin. Stay well away. Many performers draw his attention, then disappear." I widen my eyes in feigned shock. "Really?" She nods. "The color of your dress, your demure disposition, and long black hair?" She sweeps her gaze down my body, up again. "You're just his type." I don't tell her that's the point. The hope. At least it was until I acquired a cloaked observer now watching me from the back of the room, arms crossed, perched against the table of an otherwise empty booth. "There's a reason this place hemorrhages null recruits, and it's not the shit wages," she bites out, flashing me a sour smile. I don't bother asking why she stays, the swell of her belly evidence enough. There are few options for a null to make a living in gore besides slogging it out in the mines. No place for a pregnant female. Folk do what they can to get by, even if that means walking the fine line between a safe existence and a dangerous one. "I appreciate the warning," I whisper, thinking of the mysterious tip-off Sareem apparently received early in the day when our current plans were already in motion. Wondering if it was from Levy, too afraid to muddy her hands by getting involved with the Fear Duath and our sympathizing, albeit bloody, dealings. Understandably, there's no easier way to piss off our tyrant king than to liaise with his enemies. A Rooney steps close, a white robe hanging off his slight body, dark hair pulled back in a low bun. He looks down his nose at me, and my gaze drops to the only button pinching his floaty garb in place, the symbol of an etching stick upon the round of wood, signifying his ability to etch basic runes. From the way he's leering at me, I expected 2 or 3. Perhaps some specialty gift like blood lacing, or something else spectacular. At the very least, I thought his etching button would be more than elementary, made from silver or gold. Wish I could say that. I accept the amplifying stick with a demure dip of my head instead, wrapping my sweaty palms around the hollow length of metal littered with dots and swirls that emit their own radiance. I slice another glance at Tariq Relican, my teeth gritted as I look back at the cloaked observer I certainly didn't account for, unease slithering through me. "You okay?" No. A parchment lark flutters close, tips its nose, tucks its folded wings, and plummets into my lap. "Never sung before such a large crowd," I murmur, pocketing the message for later. "I get it," Levy says, offering me a reassuring smile. "They're mostly too engrossed in themselves to notice us." She lifts her fiddle, resting the bass against the scoop of her neck. "Do you know Ballad of the Fallen Moon?" All the warmth drops from my face, a strand of memory wafting through the back of my mind, stripped of emotion, beauty, pain, the ghost of something I can scarcely grasp, its corpse anchored in my icy nether, the place inside me that's vast, like the Ergor plains I once walked alone, blotches of somebody else's blood frosted to the rags that clung to my skeletal body. "Yes," I rasp. "I know that song very well." Levy drags her bow across stretched strings of moon-plume tail hair that shine in the gloom, carving out the first note, so long and deep it's almost tangible. She plays the next few with such passion it's like she wrote the tune herself. Like the fable's pretty words were tilled from the ashes of her own, caged past. I lift the amplifier to my veiled lips and draw my lungs full, shifting a little so the hidden dagger in my bodice doesn't nudge my rib. I close my eyes and plunge into the melody in the same way I once plunged into life, but with the words I've since learnt how to speak, armored by the horrors I've encountered since. Flaming horrors. Mind-mincing horrors. The crowd dissolves into oblivion as I sing of an inky saber scythe flying into a black velvet sky, balling up, and dying in the dark, where she'll never be seen again. Of a lustrous moon plume that tucks beside the sooty beast, illuminating her shape, giving her light. I sing of the moon plume's gradual dim, of how little by little, rise by rise, her luster feeds into the saber scythe and turns the creature's scales white, the tune dipping into deeper, more destructive notes, as I sing of the moon plume's slipping grip on the sky, of her fall, of the saber scythe unfurling from her perch amongst the stars, full of gifted life and light, soaring to the world below and hunting for her friend, of her scratching through inky shards of rock scattered across the snow, trying to piece her back together again, failing. Lids fluttering open, I become vaguely aware that every pair of eyes in the room is turned to us, watching, wide with greed or wet with emotions that slip down painted cheeks. But it's the cloaked male that steals my attention, the top half of his face still hidden within the shadow cast by his hood. Despite it, his stare reaches through the space and embraces me in an ironclad grip I can't shake. As the words continue to pour from my lips, I become bluntly aware that there's a danger about this male who eclipses everyone else in the room in both size and presence, who stands with the confident ease of someone untouchable. A sobering realization strikes like a blow to the side of my head, my gaze drifting to Tarek, perched in his booth, watching me with such condemning hunger I know I'm not leaving this place without him tailing me. The perfect outcome. Except, I look back to my cloaked observer, into the hooded shadows obscuring his identity. I came here to lure one monster, and ended up snagging two. Rave. Chapter 2. Nothing like 7 hours of straight singing without breaks to make you feel like you've swallowed a metal scouring brush, then hacked it straight back up again. Tugging the chain on the privy, I clear my throat, trying to shift the strain from my vocals. I close the lavatory door behind me and move to one of the basins, lathering my hands in suds as I stare at my reflection in the mirror. Powder blue eyes stare back at me, the bottom half of my face obscured by my thick red veil. In stark contrast to my snowy skin, it half clothes my long, inky locks in a dramatic sweep. You sing like a creator. I look at the female beside me, drying her hands while she studies her own reflection, chin high as she swings her head from side to side, inspecting her perfectly made-up face. Thank you. I think. Could be an insult. Who's to know with these folk? She looks at my clipped ear. Seems wasted on a gnome, she muses like I'm not even here. Definitely an insult. I'd have Ignos seeding out of the palm of my hand if my voice had that kind of range. I bite my tongue so hard it bleeds, gaze flicking to the red bead dangling from her ear before I dip my head in servitude. Yes, a true waste for someone the creators did not deem worthy of their songs. She hums, looking at her reflection again while she fixes a tendril of hair into place, seemingly validated by my nod to her ordained superiority. The moment the door swings shut behind her, I roll my eyes, drying my hands. One of these aurora cycles, I'm going to be forced to bite my tongue so hard I sever the tip. I'm sure of it. The fact that it's still attached is a fucking miracle. Stepping free of the washroom, I see a male leaning against the corridor wall ahead, blocking the only exit besides the lavatory window in the room behind me. I pause on the threshold, holding the door ajar, my heart slapped still by this unexpected development. I thought it'd take longer to lure him in. At the very least, I thought I'd be able to pee in peace before we play. Tarek Relican stares into the glass he's clutching, swirling an amber liquid, smoke sloshing free. Tangles of red hair hang before his eyes, orange flames barbered into the shorn sides, framing the elemental bead hanging from his lobe like a drip of blood.
You have a sensational voice,
he rumbles, stare still drowning in the depths of his drink.
And the color of your gown.
He tilts his head to the side, flames reflecting in his dark brown eyes that singe me from afar.
Exceptional.
I ease the door shut behind me, sealing myself in the corridor with the mail, mind churning. I've got his attention, now to lure him away from this establishment. I dip my head in thanks, then move to walk past, pausing when he pushes off the wall and turns to face me, further blocking the exit.
Stay,
he mumbles, tipping his glass to his lips. He swallows, purring a smarmy,
drink with me.
My gut knots. His mouth might be saying drink, but his eyes say ugly things that pick you apart, piece by piece, until there's nothing left for the scavengers. You really are a piece of trash.
With a voice like that,
he tacks on, stare sliding down my body like an oily brush, making my skin crawl.
I'm sure your mouth's a fucking delight.
A ball of icy rage gathers within my chest, pulsing with its own violent heartbeat, salivating to end this here. Now. It'd be silly not to. He's asking for it so beautifully. I glance at the closed exit, at the deadbolt right there, only 3 leaping steps away. If I can just get past him and slide it into place, I'll ensure nobody can interrupt this impromptu gathering until the deed is done. Apologies, sir, but it's a long walk home. I must be getting on my way if I'm to rest before the rise. I move, banking for this sliver of space on his right. His hand slams against the wall so hard the sconce flame flutters and my feet still.
I insist,
he grinds out, eyes hardening to dark flints that make something inside me pause. Listen. I weigh the value of locking that door. Risky, yes. But to be fair, I wore the veil for this very reason, on the off chance I'd be forced to escape through a back window with a severed appendage in my pocket. So nobody would pull me aside at a later date after passing me on a stairway, recognizing my face, pinning me as the prime suspect for stashing Tarek Relican, handless and pulseless, into a privy booth. Screw it. My attention homes, body poised. The tips of my fingers tingle with anticipation as I reach for the dagger within the hidden compartment tailored into my bodice. The door behind Tarek swings open and I curse beneath my breath. We both look over his shoulder at the large, cloaked male who watched me sing all slumber from the back of the room while exuding the stoicism of a stone statue. The hall suddenly feels like a vein swelling with too much hot, pumping blood, like an incinerating storm just crammed between the close-pressed walls and sponged all the oxygen, leaving little for me to breathe. Frustration and anger buck and battle inside me. My hand falls from my bodice, tucking into the gathers of my skirt where I can white-knuckle the fabric without it being obvious. What an unfortunate time to decide he needs to take a piss, though less unfortunate for him. Had he been a few moments later, he would have walked in on something he certainly wouldn't have walked away from. Clearing his throat, Tarek lifts his very lucky hand from the wall and shifts sideways, giving me space to ease past. Honestly, he should use it to shake this male's hand because he absolutely just saved his life. For now.
Milady,
Tarek bites out, forging a gaudy smile.
Have a creator's blessed slumber.
I battled the urge to let my eyebrows bump all the way into my hairline. Seems I'm not the only one who can sense the combustive energy rolling off this mysterious male. Wish he'd take that energy elsewhere. Thanks, I mutter, my stabby hand twitching as I move past Tarek and make for the exit, cutting a glance at the hooded male holding the door wide. But his attention isn't on me. It's firmly on Tarek. Odd. Sighing, I weave through the thinning crowd, passing folk fucking in darkened corners or stretched across tabletops. Others lumped in low-seaters, comatose with drinks still tucked in their loosening hands. Some are still with it enough to see me walk by, to chant for me to sing. Sing! Sing! Little do they know, that's exactly what I intend to do. With a chest full of barely restrained violence flexing for release, I make a straight shot for the exit, certain Tarek will be snapping at my heels with unquenched desires of his own. I've probably only got a few moments to spare while the hooded male relieves himself in the lavatory. Only a few moments to get Tarek out of here without the time-consuming tag-along I didn't account for. My already tight schedule is suffocating. Kamori, wait! It takes me 2 steps to register that it's my name being called. Shit. I pause, stemming a below-breath curse before I cut a glance over my shoulder. Levy's packing her instrument in the case she's flopped open across our stools, hair tucked behind her ear as she looks at me, the black smudges beneath her eyes a testament to just how long we sat and performed without breaks or refreshments. Here, she waves a small pouch through the air. Our commission. She steps down off the dais and closes the distance between us. I think the resident Rooney docked some, she says with a roll of her eyes, extending the pouch toward me. But there should be enough for a few hearty meals. Gaze bouncing between her clipped ear, the blossoming round of her belly, and what's left of the dwindling crowd, I reach forward, wrapping my hand around hers, forcing her grip to tighten on the pouch. Keep it, and thank you for playing with me. It was a treasure. A line forms between her brows. I spin, 3 steps closer to the stairway when her voice chases me. Let me walk you home. My heart plops into my belly. My bound will be waiting out front to escort me, she continues. He's a kind, hard-working male who's never hurt a soul. He can escort you, too. I glance over my shoulder, noting the deep-rooted concern in her pretty green eyes. Thank you, but I'm fine. My home is so close I'll be sleeping by the time you finish clamping the buckles shut on your case. Lie. My home is all the way down the other end of the ditch. At this rate, I'll be lucky to reach it by Aurora Rise, since I don't intend to walk in that direction once I finally make it outside. I'm 2 steps closer to the exit before her hand wraps around my arm, snagging me despite my fractious nerves galloping ahead at full speed. Levy shoves before me. Face blanched, she peeks around our dim surroundings, leaning close. I saw the way Tarek was watching you, Kamori. I fear for your safety. This time of slumber isn't kind to the likes of us. Please, let us walk you home. The determined edge to her voice dilutes my thickening frustration. She's growing on me. I hate when folk grow on me. Scanning our surroundings, I reach into the left pocket of my gown, shred the safety seam with my fingernail, then dig into the hidden compartment, pulling out a small glass orb, transparent but for the incarnated depiction of a mythical elding bird hatching from a bulb of flame caught in the orb's depths. You don't need to worry about me, I whisper, taking her hand in mine. Frowning, she drops her gaze, and I loosen my hold just enough for her to glimpse the treasure pressed between our palms, her eyes widening as realization seems to dawn. Oh, she says, the word a shaken thing, falling out in crumbled bits, like something inside her just fell apart. Tarek? I nod, pocketing the orb I'd hate for her to get caught with. She fills her lungs, but fails to forge the breath into words, releasing a shuddered exhale, stare caught on her hands now clasping the swell of her belly. A vision that does something strange to my heart. Makes me feel like it's going to burst, and not in a nice way. I need to get out of here. Take care, I whisper, about to spin again when she grabs my arm. Eyes glazed with unshed emotion, she offers me a fold of parchment. What's that? My details, in case you want to perform together again, she whisper rasps, working her lips into a smile that looks more sad than happy. Like perhaps she knows I won't contact her, that we'll never see each other again. I take it anyway, dipping my head in thanks, seeing Tarek emerge from the lavatory and catch my eye. Got you. I pivot toward the stairs and hurry from the hungry hollow. In another life, I might have befriended Levy. But so many buts. I think back to someone else I once knew. Someone else with an easy smile and warm regard. A female who's now a vaporous memory that doesn't bang against my ribs or heart. Not after I tied all those heavy, painful parts to a rock now anchored to the bottom of my icy internal lake. Companionship is something I work hard to avoid, and mostly succeed. The harder you care, the more fragile everything seems. Easier to just not. Rave. Chapter 3. Snow spews, fat flakes that catch on my feathered lashes and dust the pave anew, crunching beneath my boots as I walk the dreary ditch almost entirely bare of life at this late hour. Both halves of the immense stone wall tower on either side of me, running parallel from east to west as far as the eye can see, like two lofty bookcases, the path between them large enough for numerous carts to roll down side by side. The wall wraps around the world's plump belly like a belt, only split down the middle in densely populated segments like right here in Gore, deep enough that folk seem to feel a sense of safety within the lengthy trench, away from the immediate threat of predators. False as it is. There are just as many down here in this sheltered ditch, if not more. They're just well camouflaged. A silver salmoth splits from a swarm of them churning overhead, fluttering so close its fluffy wings dust me in a spray of luminous powder. I smile. I like this time of slumber, when it feels like it's just me, the salmoths, and the candy-colored clouds. Even though it's not. Even though I've got a monster on my heels. Although Tarek times his footsteps to match mine perfectly, planting his feet almost soft enough to meld with the patter of snow, I sense his presence like a looming shadow threatening to gobble me up. I should be scared, nervous, maybe a little sad for what I'm about to do. Survival's funny. Some wear it like a whisper, others like a scream. Mine's a scorched skeleton of flame-forged rage that keeps me upright, keeps me moving forward. There's not much that's wet and squishy left in my chest. It's all hard and hostile, impervious to things like caring for the likes of Tarek Relican. In fact, even if he were a pile of shit on the pavement, I'd still go out of my way to stomp on him. Perhaps that makes me a monster too. I don't dissect the thought, shoving it out of the way as I move up a stairway on the inside of the wall's southern half, zigzagging up the levels, past doors shut up for the slumber. I keep going until the wall is just that. Wall. No more dwellings bored into the sides. Folk don't like to live so close to the clouds, the air this far up feeling borrowed, like it doesn't belong to us, like it belongs to the dragons. A shiver scuttles up my spine, and I turn south down a lengthy wind tunnel that yawns to the view beyond the wall, packed full of clouds so close I could almost reach out and scoop handfuls of their heavy underbellies. When I'm only a few long steps away from the deadly plummet to the ground below, I dig into my pocket and ease off my iron ring, exposing myself to a riot of song that threatens to mince my brain into a fine sludge. Fucking mayhem. The tendons in my neck stretch, the veins in my temples pulsing with too much rushing blood and song. I tune my mind to the highest frequency, like tightening a sound snare, then cap the opening with a sieve, isolating Claude's manic melody blaring at the top of her billowy lungs. The goddess of air works up a howling eddy that makes my veil flutter about, a lopsided grin stretched across my face. She wants to play. So do I. The hairs on the back of my neck lift, Tarek's footsteps drawing closer. Closer. Come on, you slimy fuck. Make your move. His hand latches onto the back of my neck, and he shoves me against the wall face first, using his weight to pin me in place. My skin crawls at the heft of him, the disabling might of a male determined to take whatever he wants. I feign a whimper, a small jostle of desperation. Shh, shh, he rasps against my ear, making my blood curdle. Be a good little null. Rage explodes beneath my ribs as I consider how many others he's done this to. How many have been swallowed by his gluttonous greed like they're nothing more than a snack. No more. I lift my boot and bite down on the metal cap crowning my back molar. With a click, an iron pin spears free from my heel. Gliteano viri, I whisper sing, the words a strangled ache in my mouth, spat free, coaxing Claude to siphon almost every wisp of air from Tarek's lungs. She giggles. Tarek sucks a strangled gasp through the compacting organs, and I stomp the nullifying pin through the top of his boot. Biting down on the cap a second time, I shoot the pin so deep between Tarek's fine bones and tendons that the only way to be rid of it is to hack through his own ankle and sever the appendage. Precautions. I doubt Claude would loosen her hold on his lungs, but damned if I'm letting him set Ignos on me with a few blazing words. The god of fire loves to feast, and I'd rather be skinned alive than have him gnaw on me. Again. Tarek's grip loosens, and he stumbles back, limping, boots scuffing against the snow while I brush my hands down my gown and straighten myself. Tarek fucking Relican, I mutter, easing the ruined dragon scale blade from the secret pocket of my bodice, this one sharp enough to cut through bone like butter. I turn, head cocked to the side, looking right into his wide, bloodshot eyes, anticipation prickling in the tips of my fingers. Are you having a creator's blessed slumber? His eyes bulge, then narrow on the blade I'm twirling. He loses his footing, crumbling against the far wall, mouth agape while he claws at his throat. Guess that's a no. His chest convulses, barely a thread of breath whistling down his windpipe, doing little to inflate his suctioned lungs. Just enough to keep him present until he's heard my well-prepared speech. Once, I watched somebody drop a line beneath an icy lake and reel a long, slithering eel to the surface. It squirmed in the snow, iridescent scales glinting as its mouth gaped and gaped until it became chillingly still. This game always reminds me of that, except I felt sorry for the eel. I feel nothing for Tarek, bar the ferocious desire to slit his throat before he ruins any more lives. But not yet. First, he needs to suffer. I move forward, gaze flicking between his hands, trying to decide on a preference. Tricky, they're both so similar. One of the other elding blades might have eased you into death the gentle way, I muse, deciding on the right. I grip it and yank, slicing my blade through his wrist so fast I'm certain he doesn't realize what's happened until I'm waving the severed appendage at him. Probably would have done this after you were dead. Unfortunately for Tarek, I have a special well of rage I reserve specifically for folk like him. He gawks at me, clawing at his neck as if his hand is still attached, blood spewing from the gory stub, his mouth so wide I can see his tonsils. Perhaps I should explain, I say, pulling a wax bag from my pocket. I stuff my new hand inside and tug the drawstring tight. You see, I was roaming the Undercity and stumbled upon your little business. Little is an understatement. His sprawling establishment is like a city of its own, fit with an amphitheater-sized battle pit, sleep suites for those who never want to miss a duel, and cells of caged children. Nulls he's snatched off the wall or purchased from desperate parents who lack the wealth to keep them fed, certain they're buying their younglings a fighting chance at life, a chance to battle their way to supremacy. None of them looked malnourished, but there's more than one way to starve a soul. I tried to free your captives, some of whom, I might add, were in dire need of a healer to mend their small, broken bodies. I waved the laden bag at him, shrugging. Imagine my disappointment when I discovered I required your handprint to open their cells. I can tell by the panicked look in his eyes that he's not imagining hard enough, that he's too caught up thinking about himself. I lump the bag on the ground atop a pile of snow that's blown in as he fumbles, jabs his remaining hand into his pocket, and yanks out a blade. I seize it from his paltry grip, clicking my tongue before I stab it through his thigh. Not that I knew who you were at that point, I murmur, watching him quiver and convulse, relishing it. His face turns redder than his garb, the veins in his temples and neck bulging as I slice his blood-red tunic open, bare his chest, then snag his other hand that won't stop grabbing at me. I hoist it high, flatten it against the wall, and use my blade to pin it in place so I can focus on my task. His entire body spasms again, wetness leaching down his trousers. Funniest thing, the next day your bound found a way to reach out to us. You know who we are, of course. The Fir du Ath. From the ashes. His features crumble. I lift my skirt and pull another blade from the inside of my boot. She's lovely, you're bound. Striking. I'd barter the entire contents of my coffers that you purchased her, too, hoping the brown bead she wears would guarantee you powerful offspring. More strangled jerks, his heaving chest slicked red from the blood pulsating free of his severed stub. It doesn't elude me that he's now painted in the color he loves so much, the color he boasts. Head tilted to the side, I study my crimson canvas, dragging the tip of my blade across the expanse of his chest. I plant a little pressure down the length and begin to carve my crude code into his flesh. She said you do terrible things to her. To others, I say while I slice, slice, slice. To anybody you can get your grubby mitts on. R. Rapist. The letter weeps more of his favored color as he squirms, his mouth wide in a silent scream. Beautiful, blessed silence. I could kiss Claude at times like this. She also mentioned that although you don't make your null son fight in your prestigious Undercity battle pit, you often call upon Ignos to paint him in flames for being such a great disappointment to your bloodline. The words are forced past gritted teeth, that immense, icy presence within me shifting, rumbling. I carve a C, then an A. Child abuser. I'm tempted to give him the entire alphabet, but time is of the essence. Instead, I finish him off with 3 more letters. A-S-S. Self-explanatory. The wind becomes a cutting torrent, whistling around corners, lifting my veil, bearing me. I don't bother trying to cover up, wondering if he still likes my voice, the color of my dress, if he regrets following me, trying to assault me against the wall. His chest jerks to the manic tune of Claude's twirling giggles, practically hanging from his hand nailed to the wall while treasured breath squeaks through his throat. Ignace started speaking to your daughter. Did you know? His face contorts, bearing deeper folds of agony as his boots gouge the blood-steeped snow. She's been escorted out of the city this slumber, along with the rest of your family, but not before your bound told us everything we need to extinguish your fucked-up operations and set those younglings free. Take them somewhere safe and secure, where they can learn to be children again. I repeat Claude's suffocating tune, and she flicks around me at a voracious speed, churning my hair into an inky mess while Tarek's face turns blue, then purple. How does it feel to be nulled, Tarek? His now bleeding eyes take in the lobe of my ear, the one supposed to be pierced with a transparent bead to signify my ability to hear Claude's ever-changing, riotous song. Way I see it, it would only serve to single me out as a threat to the Fade's militant society. Fuck their system. How does it feel to suffer at the hands of someone beneath you? Still smacking his throat with his mangled arm, his mouth shapes a single word. Mercy. An eviscerating rage torches my spine, licking around my ribs, feasting on my cold, black heart. I wonder how many times the younglings who fought in his pit of death pleaded for that very thing. How many times his son said the word, looking up at the male who was supposed to nurture him, protect him. I wonder how many times hope perished in his small chest before he begged his ma to seek us out, to break free of Tarek's invisible shackles. Too many. Your family sends their regards. I sneer, then slash my blade through his throat. Rave. Chapter 4. Tarek's blood splashes across the snow, plumes of it spurting from the gory gash. I reach into my pocket and slip on my ring. The racket banging against my eardrums snips off, leaving only the organic sounds of Claude squealing past corners without her manic laughter or slicing song. I crack my neck from side to side, rolling my shoulders, ever thankful for iron's nulling properties. I can tune her out on my own if I concentrate, but it takes effort, and my guard drops while I sleep. Claude's great and all, but not when you're jostled awake by a mid-slumber squeal. And she's painfully loud, plug fingers in my ears loud, though I wouldn't dare. Don't want to get on her bad side. It's said the louder one hears the elemental songs, the greater the connection, the more power one can derive from learning their language and speaking their words. A blessing and a curse when it comes to the wild air goddess, since her squeals can be sharp enough to slit skin. Nothing worse than feeling like your brain's being filleted into fluffy segments. I tuck my veil back into place, hiding the bottom half of my face as I move to the wind tunnel's entrance and peek out, looking left and right along the thin path etched into the wall like a groove, making sure my cloaked observer hasn't shown up to play catch the iron blade between your ribs. Not seeing him or anyone else, I step farther forward, glancing down toward the ditch far below. Eddies of snow tangle with clusters of luminous sow moths, but I see no other movement, nor can I see anybody on the stair path beneath me, nor the one below that. I look across the massive cleft to the wall's parallel half, seeing nobody on the north side nor on the nearby sky bridges that stretch between both. An appreciated surprise. I step away from the edge and turn, my footsteps echoing as I walk back to Tarek's corpse still hanging from his hand pinned to the wall, his head flopped to the side. I extract my blade from the stone, and his body heaps into a steaming puddle of red. Looking at my gown, I click my tongue at the spurts of blood deepening the shade in places. I'd hoped for a clean job this time. Every time. Never happens. I unbutton the overlay on my skirt, rip the top layer from my bodice, and pull the tarnished fabric free, revealing the perfect replica beneath, balling the spoiled layer into a parcel I toss down the rubbish chute that's tunneled into the wall. One of many chutes scattered around the city, which delve past ground level, past a few levels of the undercity, and spew out into the lair of a full-grown velvet trog that feasts on Gore's trash. I tip my head to the side, gauging the distance between Tarek and the chute, deciding it's probably a little high for me to heft him into it. Better just to shove him out the hole in the wall for the many shade-born predators to pick at. Releasing a sigh, I look at his limp body, picturing a world without those who like to gobble up shiny things, then shit them out broken. Imagine, I mutter, crouching to wipe my blades on his pants before I tuck them away. Just imagine. I shake my head, grip Tarek around the ankles, and heave his weight with all the strength of my burning thighs, thankful we got almost all the way to the end before he pounced. As I drag him toward the drop, the wind sweeps through the tunnel so hard I'm certain it gives him a shove, and I smile. Claude's such a crazy, spiteful bitch. I love her. I maneuver Tarek until he's so close to the edge his arm is dangling, then wipe my hands on his tunic, crouch behind him, and put all my weight into pushing him over, catching myself on the stone as he slips from my grasp. Leaning forward, I watch him plummet toward the wall's rocky, sawtooth base far below. He impales upon a slice of stone that cuts all the way through his abdomen, and I find myself wishing I'd kept him alive so he could experience it. Damn. Missed opportunity. Standing, I use the edge of my boot to scrape the bloody smear of snow into a pile and kick it off the side. Pocketing Tarek's hand, I saunter down the wind tunnel, pausing just before the entrance, my stare catching on a bit of parchment stuck to the wall. I step closer, eyes narrowing on the script. The rebellious group known as Fear du Ath has intercepted yet another carriage of fresh elemental conscripts on their way to Drelgod for corporal training. These are your children they're stealing, taking who knows where, likely exploiting their unique gifts for their own political gain. They are weakening our kingdom, making us vulnerable to attack. This must be stopped. Any fruitful information will be rewarded with 10 buckets of bloodstone and complimentary accommodation on the north side of the wall, ground level, for 3 phases. The crown. Stealing children? Exploiting their gifts for our own political gain? What a load of spangle shit. And the crown's no longer threatening those who engage with us, but rather dangling a bountiful lure impossible to turn down, especially for those who were homeless, working in the mines, getting by on a few pouches of bloodstone per phase. This changes things. Snarling, I rip the bullshit parchment free and scrunch it into a ball, just stalking around the corner when I slam into something hard. A firm hand wraps around my wrist, steadying me. The same wrist that's attached to the hand currently clawed around the balled-up bit of parchment, offering a hefty reward for, well, me. I look up in time for a blow of wind to push back the hood of the mysterious male from the hungry hollow. My heart plummets, breath loosens. For the first time since Fallon taught me speech, I'm lost for words. He's harshly chiseled, raw, fiercely beautiful. My lungs pull full of his scent, so deep and drugging, like smelted stone topped with a ladle of cream. I hold the breath hostage, taking him in, admiring his black hair that falls just past his shoulders. It's half pulled back off his face that's partially shadowed by a few loose strands, failing to soften his regard. His piercing eyes the rich, molten color of fired wood. His brows are thick, the lower half of his face shaded by a dark beard that adds a rugged texture to his already robust appearance, like he belongs in one of the renowned warrior clans that took root amongst the Balkanic plains millions of phases ago, wielding an axe and a blood-lusting roar. His gaze rips from mine, bouncing around our surroundings, searching every shadow dip. I notice the tapered tip of his right ear is punched through with a small black cuff that encases part of the shell, but no beads. He's showcasing as a null, minus the clip, but I know better than to assume he doesn't hear any of the elemental songs, especially given the immense energy rolling off him, shoving against me, making me feel as if he's so much bigger than the space he's currently inhabiting. Which is a lot, being a head and a half taller than me, his broad chest and shoulders reminding me of a saber scythe. The bold, muscular sort of build often found in those with strong roots to the burn, the hot, ever-sunny northern kingdom. His condemning stare lands on me again, and it's like a swift kick to the ribs, winding, chest deflating. He's looking at me like I just shoved a dead elemental off the wall. Or maybe I'm imagining things. I'm certain there was nobody else around. The line between his brows deepens.
Are you okay?
His dense voice skims my heart like flint scoured across stone, leaving a residue of sparks that crackle through my icy bloodstream in the strangest way. Am I okay? I mirror his frown. Are you mad?
Possibly.
He rumbles, voice like a spill of warm, rolling rocks. A flake of snow lands atop my forehead, and my breath hitches as he lifts his spare hand, bringing it toward my face, like perhaps he's going to sweep the flake away. I catch myself falling into the motion before I realize he's reaching for my veil. The air between us turns stiff and sterile. Even Claude stops her whipping stir. I wouldn't. I purr, pressing a small iron dagger to his crotch, the dagger always notched just up my sleeve for times such as this. His brow bumps up.
Quick hands.
It's iron.
I can smell that.
He growls, his voice thick with the rich, exotic accent of northerners.
Name. Now. And not the fake one you gave to whoever hired you at the Hungry Hollow.
Thorough. Interesting. I lean more pressure into my little iron blade that suddenly feels vastly inadequate against everything it's pressed against, though I'm not one to stand down from a challenge. No, but I'll serve you your own cock if you don't let go of my wrist. My words are sultry smooth, passed to him like a ballad I'm certain he's going to appreciate less than the songs I sang all slumber, until the corner of his mouth flicks up the slightest amount, surprising me. He makes a gruff sound, drops my wrist, then steps back, forging a small cleft of space between us that feels like a canyon I'm standing on the edge of, the arches of my feet tingling as a strange flutter takes flight inside my belly. Confusion scrambles my thoughts. Thank you, I announce, straightening my shoulders. Keeping my blade pointed at his crotch, I crunch the parchment into a tighter ball, then stuff it into my pocket. maybe I won't have to kill him. He didn't see me kill Tarek, hasn't seen my face nor the notice I tore off the wall. He certainly hasn't tried to take liberties with me. Perhaps he's not the monster I thought he was while he watched me sing All Slumber with an obsessive sort of severity. Not to mention the time it would take to drag him to the same edge I shoved Tarek over if I were forced to slit his throat where we stand. That's even if I could drag him. I'd probably have to hack him into smaller bits, a messy task that sponges time, something I'm swiftly running out of, Tarek's hand a heavy weight in my pocket. If you'll excuse,
There's a dead male face speared through the gut down there,
he says, brow arched, jerking his chin toward the wind tunnel's gaping exit to the unmerciful plummet below, his voice a rough monotone that cleaves an even deeper split between my options. I just came from there, and I saw no male. I keep my dagger steady, muscles poised. All I saw was a monster. I hold his gaze, perched upon the sharp edge of indecision, waiting for his response to stretch between us before I decide which way I'll fall, whether I categorize this male in the same box as Tarek or a different one. A safer one. His eyes bore into me like he's excavating bits of my soul as he says,
On that, I heartily agree.
I frown, open my mouth, close it. Safe box it is. Don't follow me. I bite out, then pull my dagger from his crotch and stalk off down the nearby staircase without looking back. Rave. Chapter 5. I dump Tarek's hand down a scarcely used, pre-designated rubbish chute, waiting with my head pushed through the hole until I hear a whistle from another member of Fir Du'ath deep in the Undercity. Confirmation the package was caught, that the others will now work to free the younglings. Being an Elding blade, I kill. Nothing more. I certainly don't rescue. That task left to others not so comfortable getting bloody. But part of me almost yearns, too, this time. This mission has been so personal to me. A large-scale passion project I fought hard to have approved. One that tunneled the Ath's resources away from our regular missions that focus on implicating the crown. I turn, lean against the wall, close my eyes, and smile. A pleasant warmth spreading through my chest as I imagine the light igniting in those younglings' eyes when they realize they're free. Truly free. In a way I doubt I'll ever fully understand. Make yourself indispensable and folk dig their claws in. Doesn't matter if they're good or bad or somewhere in the middle. If there's anything I've learned from this life, it's that. Still, I hope those younglings like it at the Flourish. I've never been to the underground safe haven ruled by the Elding, and though I've heard it somewhere in the south, I don't think I'll ever know for certain. See it with my own 2 eyes. That would be considered retirement, and I doubt the leader of the Fir Du'ath has any interest in relinquishing my usefulness, instead plying me with placating missions I'll happily accept. Especially ones that end like this, filling me with this warm feeling of momentary contentment. Like I've just scrubbed one of the many stains from this big, beautiful world I so desperately want to love. Besides, I'm not so sure retirement would suit me. Not the sort that would undoubtedly come with a one-way trip to the Flourish. I think my fingers would get itchy. There's too much trash to take out. I step out onto one of the perilous sky bridges that stretches between both halves of the wall, the silent city so far beneath me. At 33 levels up, this one is the highest, never used by others and crusted in layers of snow that crunch beneath my boots. Reaching the middle, I lie on my back, as close to the clouds as I can get, letting the cold sink through my gown, into my flesh and bones. Deeper. My eyelids flutter shut. Fat flakes of snow patter upon my face and the lax scoops of my hands, and I focus on each icy point of contact, loosening the muscles beneath, releasing some of the tension I'd collected throughout the slumber. Picturing myself as a dragon, wings outstretched, I tip and churn through the puffy pink clouds, so far above the world that all I hear is my heartbeat and the heavy thump of my imaginary wings. All I feel is the flexing strength of my body, untethered, free. An icy calm settles within me like a nesting beast, and I wiggle my toes, my fingers, slowly bringing myself back to reality. Opening my eyes, I look through a gap in the clouds to the moon of a perished molten maw resting above the city. Perhaps the biggest one I've seen, bound in a tight ball, head tucked beneath its wing, its stony plumage brushed in shades of purple, pink, and blue. I stare at it, recalling the time Ruse mentioned this sad story about how that dragon got there. Not that I probed for details. In fact, I think I turned around and walked straight from her store without looking back. Sadness is like stones that stack inside you, making it harder to move. Ignorance is my self-preservation tonic, and I'll swear by it until I die. Sometimes, however, when I'm lying on what feels like the top of the world with this sleeping city beneath me, I wonder if that moon is ever tempted to fall, to crush Gore in a strike of spite for whatever caused it to soar up there and perch atop the Fade's decorated capital like a lingering threat. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe every last wisp of a dragon's cognizance dissolves the moment they solidify, and they don't decide to fall at all. Maybe something else rips them from the sky. And maybe that dragon didn't consider much of anything when it decided to curl up there. Maybe it wasn't fueled by thoughts of revenge, as I like to believe it was. Maybe it was just a convenient spot to die. Gaze still cast on the moon, I wiggle my hand into my pocket, retrieving the parchment lark I received at the Hungry Hollow and lifting it above my face, unfolding its wings, beak, and body until I'm left with a crimped square scrawled in Essie's handwriting. I hope you got your hand, since I know you won't read this until after you're done, which is anxiety-inducing, just so we're clear. What if I desperately need a stick of porthonium to prevent the world from crumbling and you're too busy carving words into somebody's chest to unfold my lark still stuffed in your pocket? Think of the world, Rave. And the hyperfixation I'm currently nursing. Anyway, here's a very important list I'm sending because I know how you feel about me going to the Undercity alone. Patience is my biggest and most impressive virtue. I snort-laugh. Essie has the patience of a waif hungry for a soul to sink its teeth into, and not a pinch more. But good for her thinking otherwise. Enthusiasm suits her. A hand-sized lump of iron, so I can make more pins for your boot. 3 shaves of saber-scythe tusk, ideally from a mature beast well past their 10th shed. A 0.0112 etching stick reinforced enough to scour diamond. Just hand this list to Ruse because this probably makes no sense. Wise beyond your lifespan, I say, gaze skimming farther down her list. A jar of fluffy Salmoth powder, or if there's none in stock, can you catch me one, please? I'll collect the powder myself, then set it free. Promise. I cringe, remembering the last time I leapt around the ditch, armed with a glass jar and a holy lid. A full-body shudder almost rattles me to the core. I'll never forget the way the Salmoth squeaked. I didn't even know they could squeak. Catch your own damn Salmoth, I mutter, knowing damn well I'll catch her a bloody Salmoth if the bloody store has no jars of bloody powder. My eyes narrow on the last request, half concealed by a blotch of Tarek Relican's blood. And lastly, please go to the Undercity and splat. It's very, very, very important. Course it is. I sigh, trying to scratch off the blood, despite knowing full well it's not going to work. According to Essie, there are many important things to be found in the filthy, rotten Undercity. Which makes sense for somebody whose world once revolved around the deep, craggy cleft in the ground beneath the wall. My mind tunnels back to the moment I found her dashing from the miner's muck hall with a stolen lump of stale bread in her filthy hands, undernourished, dressed in rags, hair shorn because she'd learned that males get heckled less than the females down there. She'd told me she was born in an abandoned shaft and that her parents set off for a shift in the mines and failed to return, long ago. That she'd never seen the sky, didn't know what the aurora was, or that we wake and sleep in rhythm with its rise and fall. I was still covered in the blood of a supervisor I'd caught doing terrible things to a miner when I took Essie to meet the sky, then promised to keep her safe. Harder than it sounds when everything she needs seems to come from the fucking Undercity. Contrary to her boast, she's rarely patient enough to send me a supply list. Frowning at the flattened lark, I try to scratch the blood off again, unsuccessfully, then pocket it and set my sight on the moon, hands clasped over my waist. Even if I did know what's scrawled beneath this splat of blood, I'm supposed to be keeping my distance until I get word the younglings from Tarek's cells are out of gore. I can, however, fetch Essie everything else if I stay out past the rise. Best I don't head straight home anyway, considering I chose not to eliminate the nice-smelling, mysterious loose end who may or may not believe I killed Tarek Relican. Creators. Why did I do that? I usually cut first, don't think later. I much prefer myself that way. Now I have to spend a small eternity checking over my shoulder, making sure the decision doesn't swing around and bite me in the ass. Diary entry. Elowen Nevan. Age 9 phases. 5,030 phases after stone. Mommy and Poppy say I'm too young to have a dragon, and it doesn't matter that the moon plumes in the palace hutch let me sleep with them. They say wild moon plumes will drop from the sky the moment I step onto their spawning grounds, snatch me up, shake me until I'm limp, then feed me to their young. I think that's a plop of spangle poop. And I don't think it's very fair that I should have to wait until I'm 18 to find out for myself how big that plop of poop really is. Poppy said I can put my argument forth once I hear the elemental songs, and I've learned to speak them properly, but I think that's a plop of spangle poop too. Hadeon waited a long time, and they never sang to him. And I've been listening really hard, every cycle, singing to the snow and the air and the ground and the flames. Nobody's singing back but Mommy and Poppy at slumber time. Not that I mind. I don't want to wear that silly stone, anyway. Mommy always looks so tired, like her head's heavy. Poppy's crown looks heavy too, but not in the same way. The stones on his are so pretty and shiny, and make him look proud and important. The stone on Mommy's is so black it looks like somebody could fall straight through it. Sometimes I catch Mommy trying really hard to pull her diadem off while she screams and cries and folds herself up real small. It makes my heart hurt. I don't think that stone is very good for Mommy. Last slumber, I found her outside, crying in the dark while the falling snow stuck to her hair. Her sad sounds made me cry, too. I sang a song I'd hoped would make her feel better, but she just cried harder. She wiped my cheeks and told me she'd be okay, that she lost something important, but that my cuddles made her feel much better. Poppy found us then. He picked her up and took her inside, then tucked me into my pallet, kissed me on the nose, and told me it would make sense when I'm older. I don't think I want to understand. Rave. Chapter 7. The bloated clouds crawl north in time for the aurora to peak above the eastern horizon. 10 luminous silver ribbons wiggling into view, moving to their own hypnotic beat. The world comes alive with the distant screech of molten maws, their scratchy yawns threatening to split the sky. I push up from the sky bridge, groaning, my legs a little stiff from disposing of Tarek's body and lying in the snow. Yawning, I make for the north side, trekking down 33 levels of steep stairways until I step onto the ground level and into the already churning crowd. The ditch bustles with folk completing their early chores, clearing snow gathered before doors, chopping kindling, and fetching bottles of Colk milk left beneath the eaves of those who can afford the run. Merchants roll by on Colk-driven carts laden with tinctures, ruined gadgets, and crates of exotic food, setting up shop for the day. A plethora of parchment larks flutter about, darting between folk and landing on outstretched hands, though some have no direction at all. Ghost larks, perhaps meant for somebody lost, that now spend their existence dancing with the fluffy sow moths I'm feeling far too tired to chase. Please have jars of dust, I murmur, jostling through the crowd. Pausing by a store that's yet to open, I pretend to window shop while I check I'm not being followed, using the opportunity to ensure my veil still thoroughly conceals the lower half of my face. That there's no bloody stains anywhere on my gown that's cinched at my waist, the gathered bustle emphasizing my round hips. The tight bodice makes my already full breasts almost spill from the neckline, and though that played the part last slumber, I look entirely overdressed amongst the freshly woken folk churning about the ditch at my back. Not ideal. I grab the tail of my veil, rearranging it so it's draped across my bust, hiding all my perky, pale flesh. Much better. I weave through the crowd until I reach a north side shop tucked beneath a wind chute. Pink, powdery sunlight shoots through with a blow of fresh air, rustling the plants that dangle from the store's eave, its name crafted on a stone plaque set amongst the stained glass window fashioned to look like a montage of molten maw plumage. The Curly Quill. Parchment, pawn, and all your Rooney supplies. I yank the door open, taking a step into the long, lofty store lined with rows of ceiling-high shelves packed to the brim with everything a Rooney could possibly require. Stacks of flat parchment squares with pre-drawn activation lines, small tincture jars choked by dangly labels, leather-bound books dyed an array of colors to match their painted edges. There's an abundance of quills, jars of various etching sticks, and lumps of different ores and gemstones. Halfway through the doorway, I pause, watching a vibrant flock of parchment larks churn about the shelves with feathers attached to their ends, looking like miniature molten maws. Every time I come, the flock has doubled in size. I'm sure of it. "Close the door before my pets escape," Ruse yells from the back of the shop, "or you'll not be doing business here for the rest of your existence." I tug the door shut and weave between the shelves. "You know I'd catch them for you, Ruse." "Don't sweet-talk me, Rave. I'm eyeball deep in inventory and a hair's breadth away from losing my ever-loving mind." I round the final shelves, coming to a stone counter that dominates the store's back end. Ruse is seated behind it, slouched over a bowl brimming with bugs armored with brown interlacing shells that can wrap around their wriggling bodies and contort them into tiny balls of stone. One by one, Ruse is tucking them into bottleneck jars stuffed with a sprig of greenery and half an inch of rust-colored dirt, scoring lines on a scroll to the side with each weighty plop. I watch her work, Her wild tangle of curls such a bright shade of orange. Looks tedious. "I want to impale myself with this quill," she mutters, then corks the bottle she's currently filling and places a lid on the bowl. She clasps her hands together, slaps a wide smile on her face, and beams at me through pretty, sunburst eyes. "How can I be of service?" I pass her Essie's list. The white tuft of an otherwise lanky tail rises from behind the counter, waving back and forth, making me smile. "Hi, Uno." The tuft wiggles faster before brushing Ruse's jaw affectionately, an adoring softness spreading across Ruse's face as she reaches beneath the counter, no doubt to rub Uno behind the ears. I wonder how big she's gotten. Miscuns are so scarce and greedily coveted, I rarely glimpse more than the expressive tail of the creature who dotes on Ruse like a mother. Which is a shame. She's such a sweet thing. Ruse hums, gaze still skimming the script. "Can't help with whatever's supposed to be beneath this splat of blood," she murmurs, lifting her hand to scratch at it. "Messy job?" "Unfortunately," I shrug. He was a squirter. "Ah. Do you have any of the other things in stock?" "You're in luck," she says, winking. "I have it all." I breathe a sigh of relief, thankful I don't have to repeat the jar debacle. Ruse grabs a cloth bag and moves around the counter, humming while she shifts between the shelves. Returning, she lumps the laden bag before me and sits again, sliding a large leather-bound ledger into sight. She lifts the front cover, flicking through until she settles on a page titled Rave, Dragon Bloodstone, 721 buckets. My eyes widen. I had no idea I had so much currency. The swelling digits a running commentary on how many bodies I've shoved off the wall to be picked apart by the predators that dwell beneath. "I see your numbers have grown since..." The inky scrawl stating my well of wealth bleeds off the page like watery ink blown off a slippery surface before new digits appear in their place. Smaller digits. I frown. Guess Sareem decided to charge me for the mission I begged the Elding for support on, and only because there was no possible way I could save all those younglings by myself. Lovely. A stark reminder that the hand that gives can just as greedily take away. Ruse clears her throat, sliding her pink spectacles further down her nose, glancing up at me from beneath a fan of orange lashes. Busy slumber? Not the sort of busy they like, apparently. She gives me a rueful smile, then recomposes herself back into the vision of stoic storekeeper. "Well, besides your purchases from the list, would you like to spend any more of your 610 buckets of dragon bloodstone?" I chuff. "Actually," I look at my gown, brushing my hands over the thick, ruddy panels. "I had to toss a layer of this to the trog. Am I able to replace it?" "Won't be a problem." Her gaze flits over my ensemble, then back to her book as she lifts a curly blue quill, dips it in a pot of ink, and scratches something on my page. "Anything else?" My mind tunnels back to the moments following Tariq's disposal, to the quiet allure I experienced toward a heavily accented male I probably should have slaughtered. But I didn't, because he smelled good. "Got any sawtooth blades?" She pauses, looking at me from beneath an arched brow. "Planning to hack somebody up?" "Hope not." I shrug. Humming again, she spins in her chair and pushes to a stand, snatching at the stone wall behind her. What's actually a ruined drape ripples as she rips it wide, revealing the full, gloomy expanse of the store that goes so deep it's hard to see the end, the real walls lined with vaults of bloodstone, weapons, armor, and various infantry. She unlocks one of the many grated repositories, retrieving a small saw she carries my way, tugging the curtain shut before she passes me the weapon. I weigh it in my hand, tossing it to the other. Good shape, but a little less weight in the handle would be better. She nods, scratching something else on my page. Hiding place? Thigh. Sheath? Colt leather, preferably dyed fadestone brown, the buckles made of anything other than an iron compound. We say the last two words in unison, and the faintest smile tips her mouth as she bobs her head, still scratching. I'll have one forged to your size requirements and send a parchment lark when it's ready to be inspected. Perhaps by the next Aurora rise if you're wanting a rush job and willing to pay extra. Sounds good? I'd like it soon, just in case said cloaked male decides to prove me wrong about the box I placed him in. Any withdrawals this day? Nope, but I'll return once I've rested to draw down and do another bloodstone scatter. Folk are starving to death in the Undercity, and nobody's doing anything about it. As you wish. Ruse jots something on a notepad while I recall my first round of wages. Bloody payment for a bloody deed. That's all I could see it as. Nothing's changed. I only keep what I need to survive, to do my job, and to support Essie. My periodic donations to the poor, sick, and hungry are my quiet fuck you to those who think they can placate me by plying me with payments and approving my passion missions. It makes me feel like I'm winning, even though I'm not. I'll ensure we have enough for the withdrawal, Ruse says, curly quill wriggling as she scratches away. If the king put as much effort into feeding the poor as you do, the Fade would be a much better place to live. Like that's ever going to happen. I doubt he's gone hungry before. Not really. If he knew the weight of a hollow ache, perhaps he wouldn't be so incompetent. Though maybe not. You can reshape a turd an infinite number of times, but it's still a turd. It still stinks. Ruse closes the ledger. I'll be in contact about the gown. Given your special requirements, it might take a while for the merchant who imported the material from the burn to source more of the same color. No rush, I say, gathering my bag full of Essie's things. Any other material makes me cook up. I'd rather have it made with the right stuff. She tilts her head in acknowledgement, and I turn to leave. Not so fast, Rave. Pausing, I look over my shoulder, brows pulling together as Ruse waves a recently unfolded parchment lark at me. Apologies. I know you're tired, but Sareem wants to meet with you. All that tension I'd worked so hard to extinguish while lying on the sky bridge comes crashing back, making it feel like my heartstrings are being strung out across a rack. Tell her I'll be back once I've slept. If she can't be bothered coming down the stairs to request my presence herself, she's in no mood I want to deal with. Certainly not while hungry, sleep-deprived, and boasting a dwindling well of patience. I'm 3 steps closer to the exit when Ruse's voice chases me like the flick of a whip snapping around my ankles. It was an order, Rave, not a request. Shackle tugged. I sigh, cast my stare to the ceiling, and count to 10 before I nod, then make for the bare-faced door in the corner of the store and yank it open. How you can stand to exist in the same vicinity as that manipulative serpent is well beyond me, I mutter loud enough for Ruse to hear. Maybe Sareem, too. Ruse's laughter chases me all the way up the stairway and into the serpent's den. Rave. Chapter 8. I heard that, Sareem snips out, her voice a whetted blade. I unwind my veil, stepping into her long office, casting my gaze about the tidy space that boasts an extravagant amount of purple. Rugs, cushioned cedars, walls, bookshelves. Can't escape it. I think I'd actually like the color had I not been treated like a scratching post almost every time I've stepped foot in this room. What? I ask, finding Sareem by the large purple glass window that looks out upon the ditch below. I'm genuinely baffled. Ruse deserves a raise for putting up with your shit on a constant basis. Sareem spins, impaling me with her cool silver stare, her angular face perfectly painted, as always. Never a hair out of place or a blemish to be seen, white Rooney bead hanging from her lobe. She's donning a thick purple coat that melds with her body, snowy tufts of fur spilling between each seam that match the color of her coiffed hair. My eyes narrow on the chain around her neck, threaded with a silver vial that's etched in luminous runes, every cell in my body screaming for me to lunge forward and rip it free. Tip its contents down a drain. Instead, I move toward the huge desk that dominates the space, everything on it perfectly squared. Setting my bag on the floor, I drop into the boxy chair reserved for visitors and kick my legs up over the armrest. I bite my tongue everywhere else. I refuse to bite it here. Feel free to cut me loose if it bothers you so, I say, batting my lashes. Promise I won't complain. Quite the opposite. I might even do the odd side assassination for the cause in between hunting folk I choose to hunt. Murderers, child abusers, incompetent kings. The muscle in Sareem's jaw pops, her eyes hardening like molten ore dropped in a bed of snow. You'd struggle without the Ath's unlimited support were you forced to live like the masses, Rave. Don't forget how well we pad your pockets. There would be no more dragon bloodstone to scatter throughout the Undercity and give you that false sense of importance you can't seem to live without. I see neither of us are in the mood to play nice. Sliding a blade from my bodice, I thump my boots on her desk, nudging a few of her perfectly lined-up quills. Don't act like you care about my well-being. You don't, I say, flipping the weapon between my fingers. You're just the bitch who clamped a shackle around my wrist and called it mercy. The vein in Sareem's temple swells so much I quietly hope it'll burst. It's surprising you speak to me with such disrespect, given said shackle. Yeah, I mutter, using the blade to dig some of Tarek's dried blood from beneath my nails. To what do I owe the honor of being summoned into your den, Sareem? She glares at me, watching me flick curls of hardened blood upon her plush purple rug. It's always interesting to see how far I can push her before she sweeps me from her space like a long-legged bug she can't eradicate fast enough, hoping she'll eventually decide my presence is more hassle than it's worth. She paces toward me, lowering into the plump purple throne on her side of what I consider our makeshift barricade, folding her hands together atop the desk. I wanted to make sure you received my parchment lark. Is the mission complete? I ask, brow arched. No confirmation yet. I mean the one I sent last cycle, just before the aurora fell. Fresh orders. Lovely. My interest dissolves, stare cast on my nails again, digging out more filth. Must have gotten lost. Perhaps it'll circle back round once I've slept, as they often do. So considerate. You should take notes. I sense her simmering frustration like a welling storm cloud that clots up the air with a static charge. Still, I flick, flick, flick. Funny how you're the only one who has trouble receiving my larks. One of the world's great phenomena. Doubtful. A brief pause, then, Rex Moonplume is in the city hutch. My heart drops, gaze whipping up, plunging into Sareem's stony stare. Who's he hunting? Us. My responding curse is as sharp as the blade in my hand. He's been hired by the Crown, and he's here to put a pin in our rebellion, to stop us from draining the kingdom of its fresh-faced conscripts. Well, he needs to die. I swing my boots off the table and sheathe my blade. I'll take care of him, I say, an eager hitch to my voice. Every time I've seen the bounty hunter, the metal spurs on the back of his boots have been caked in blood. Don't need a grand imagination to work out who the blood belongs to. Likely the poor moon plume he apparently charmed after slaughtering its former rider, if the rumors are true. I'll take a vast amount of pleasure in his assassination. I rise from my seat. No, Sareem bites out, and I frown. What do you mean, no? Sit, Rave. I sigh, then do as she ordered, loathing the spark of satisfaction in her eye. Why don't you want me to kill him? I ask, past clenched teeth. That's what I do. I take out the trash nobody else wants to muddy their hands with, sweeping the path clear of any filth that might prevent the Ath from completing its missions. Wreck is in the path, Sareem. He's endangering other members, most of whom I respect. She gives me a bland look that doesn't so much as pinch, though perhaps it would if she'd ever done anything to gain my respect. Let me at him. No. That fucking word again. Why not? Because he's well-watched bait. Then I'm perfect for the job. No, she chides for the third time. Your instructions are to lie low until he's gone. That means no random slaughterings when you find someone doing something they shouldn't or hear someone crying out for help. No jobs, nothing, until I say otherwise. You will only leave your home to purchase produce or to come to me if I call on you. I frown, thoughts churning hard and fast, whisking into a snowstorm caught beneath my ribs. There's not a single hit Rexaros has failed to bring down, so he's not leaving this city without blood on the tip of his barbed whip. If we don't eliminate him, he'll take one of us down, and it won't be pretty. I'm aware, she says through tight lips, a stern finality to her tone that strikes my nerves with that serene serpent bite. Meaning, she's going to toss somebody considered less useful at him, a sacrifice to the ravenous crown. Something inside me splinters, bowing beneath an immense weight pressing against my ribs, my upper lip curling. You feed the monster and more will slip from the shadows. Once the smell of blood taints the air, they don't stop coming. Sareem sighs, reaching across the desk to straighten her quill collection. Are you going to tell me how to do my job again, Rave? It's getting old for me, too. Every time we intercept a transport carriage full of young elemental conscripts, it's a bandage on a much bigger problem. So long as the king continues to rule, there will be more carriages, more bounty hunters, more death and suffering. Still, her eyes are cast on her quills, like she values the task more than she values everything the Fear Duath is supposed to stand for. I snarl, slashing my hand across the table, littering the floor with feathers. What about the sick, the starving, the nulls? Slowly, she pulls her hand back, scouring me with a wide-eyed stare. We spent all slumber saving 57 nulls. At your bidding, an operation I funded myself, I snip, brow raised. Or perhaps you thought I wouldn't notice, since I don't often check my reserves? Of course I docked your reserves, she sneers. Running such a large-scale operation is costly in ways you'll never understand. We risked our entire cause to keep you happy, hindered political progress. Someone had to pay. To keep me happy. Right. You know what that tells me? I say with a humorless laugh. That the Ath doesn't value the nulls as much as it values the elementals. I don't go down to the Undercity just to scatter bloodstones, Sareem. I go down there to see if anybody needs help because nobody else seems to give a fuck. She snatches the vial dangling between her breasts. Shit. I brace myself as she scrapes the tip of her tailored nail down the groove of my rune. My entire body jolts, the same scratching sensation scoring one of my ribs like a filleting blade. Why can't you just be happy? She snips while my breaths come short and sharp, eyes narrowed on the poisonous female. You have the Elding's favor. He does more for you than he's ever done for anyone else. Isn't that enough?" I bind my side with a trembling hand, struggling to wrap my mind around the jealous taint to her tone. Not only have I never met the Elding, but being his favorite is swiftly tumbling to the bottom of my priority list. She lifts her nail, brows hiked up to her forehead, finger poised to mess me up all over again. Creators, I loathe this female. Hard to be happy when the king's mincing young elemental minds until they're brainless killing monsters. When thousands of less valued folk are rotting in the Undercity, failing to scratch out an existence in the mines, slaves to the kingdom's well-oiled cogs. Wiping beads of sweat from my brow, I reach into my pocket, unscrunch the notice I ripped off the wall, and slap it on the desk, though Serene merely glances at it. If we don't usurp the king, I'm convinced things are going to get much, much worse. Not now, she says in a firm, even tone. Not until the Elding deems it so. Same story, different day. Screw the Elding. Another sadistic scrape of her nail, this one scouring down the knobbles of my spine. Another series of hissed breaths, and I chew on the urge to lurch across the table and pop her eyeballs from their sockets. Fuck the repercussions. But I hold my composure, the pain still slicing down my bowing vertebrae like skipping stones as I speak through gritted teeth. Slitting King Kadok Vagor's throat will not only keep me from being a pain in your ass, it'll protect the cause. She releases the vial. I swallow my breath of relief, refusing to give her the satisfaction, instead jabbing an unsteady finger at the notice that's fully armed to do irreparable damage. Nobody will suspect it, given the heat surrounding our name. Simply killing him without a thorough, well-constructed plan would leave the Queen in charge. Perfect! I throw my hands in the air, wondering why it was presented as a negative when it's exactly what this kingdom needs. This is her ancestral land. She should be in charge. The Tri-Council would never allow it. Queen Dorothea can only speak with Claude. A sour taste coats my tongue. Don't they have a tri-bead son? Prince Turon hasn't been seen for many phases. Some say he went mad, and rather than make the problem public, the king was all too happy to hide him away. But he's still more competent than King Kadok Vagor. Perhaps he'll pop his head back up once his pa's remains fertilize the ground. Serene looks at me like she's more than ready to grab the broom and sweep me toward the door. Again, Rave, you assume you have some say in the matter. You don't. You have one job, and that's to follow my orders. When I say stab, you say how deep. When I say leave Rex Zaros alone, you leave Rex Zaros well the fuck alone. It's weird hearing her swear. Perhaps I'd pump my fist and call it a victory if anger wasn't churning in my gut like a snowball that grows with each bouldered roll. How do you live with yourself? Honestly. She grips her vial again, and my entire body flinches. Satisfaction ignites her eyes, a smirk curling her lips that boils my blood. These aren't easy decisions to make, but I must consider the cause, first and foremost. Your strong affinity with Claude, your skill with a blade, and that savage side I glimpsed before you collapsed in the Undercity the first time we met makes you an essential tool we can't do without. An icy rumble builds in my chest. I curse the day she fell upon me, seeing that side of me I barely understand myself. Not that I remember that part of our meeting. Tucked beyond a veil of ice, I was all too happy to ball up and wither beneath. I do remember the screams that somehow found their way down to me. I also remember being pitted with a certainty that whatever I was doing was not okay, but that the part of me in control lived by a different set of rules. That in their eyes, it was tame. Serene later told me I'd looked out at her through black, glittery eyes, face splashed in blood, canines bared, and that she knew I was broken beyond repair, in desperate need of an avenue to channel my rage. I see it differently now. I think she saw me, surrounded by the mulched bodies of freshly slain folk who'd come to hunt me down, and decided broken things make the sharpest weapons, so long as you fetter them to yourself so they don't fly away. You coped just fine without me before you snatched me from the gutter. I gave you the option, she volleys, quick as a blink. A deep belly laugh wrestles up my throat, spilling out in a mirthless tone. And what an option it was, I muse. Die, or drip my blood into your ruined vial and be a forever slave to your whim, able to be yanked to heel at any given opportunity. Except it wasn't voiced that way, was it? You offered me revenge, painted such a pretty picture I was salivating to give you my blood, falling into your web like a plump bug, immediately put to work. So many empty promises. Ironically, had you simply asked me to join the cause, I may have agreed, given the drowning amount of injustice I soon discovered in this kingdom. But you just had to slap a collar around my neck. She sighs, long and deep, the breezy confidence of someone who lives in a bubble of safety I can't penetrate. Always so dramatic, Rave. Truly, I've never met someone with so much battle in their blood. Her elegant hand grips the vial hanging between her breasts. Perhaps you wouldn't be so bitter were you not constantly testing me, forcing me to take advantage of the bloodbind. Yeah, okay, it's my fault. Can't you see you're made for this? Sure, I deadpan. Nothing quite like the constant threat of a casual torture session to make you feel right at home. It's nothing personal. Everybody puts their blood in the vial, except you, benefiting from its many advantages. Remember how quickly I was able to heal you? She continues seamlessly. You would have died without it. Besides, you're the only one I'm forced to punish. And what do you do for the cause? I ask, brow raised. Besides sucking the Elding's metaphorical cock. Her cheeks flush, painted lips falling open. Not that any words come out. My brows bump up. Not so metaphorical, it seems. You chose to live, she seethes. Sure, it's no longer on your terms, but at least you're breathing. I'd think you'd be more humble toward the one who saved your life. I click my tongue, trying to imagine a world where someone would deign to help another without expecting something in return. Failing. Thousands of times I've been pieced back together. Only once was it for my own benefit. But Fallon's dead, her light extinguished, all that goodness gone from the world. Serene may think she saved my life, but all she did was cage me again, carving Fallon's death into an even deeper tragedy. I'd rather be back in our cell, looking up at the moons Fallon sketched on our ceiling with blunt bits of coal. Would rather be listening to her vivid explanations for the colorful clouds draped across the fade, her words so descriptive my mouth would water, like I could taste the colors, feeling their textures puff against my tongue. She made freedom sound so exquisite with her big, beautiful vocabulary, made it sound so magical. I couldn't wait to taste clouds with her, to lie on our backs, side by side, and look upon the real moons. Together. But she's dead, and I'm here, shackled to this purple-scaled serpent, doing none of the living I promised Fallon I'd do before I lost her, before I woke to find her cold, unmoving. The barbed memory is an icy spike hammered into my hardened heart, all the way to the soft core, pitting me with a twinge of raw, familiar pain. No. I sink into my inner self, landing upon the crumbled obsidian shore of my immense frozen lake, struck by the eerie silence that always makes my skin pebble. I pinch a fist-sized stone I use to bind the offending memory around, then creep out onto the smooth, frosty expanse that soothes the bare soles of my feet. Kneeling, I carve a hole in the thick ice, cold water oozing up the moment it cracks free. I tip the lid, plop the heavy thought down the gap, and rush away, the hairs on the back of my neck lifting as I blink back to my external reality. My next breath is a blow of icy air, Sareem's earlier words still echoing through my mind. You chose to live. Sure, it's no longer on your terms. At least you're still breathing. I look at the female watching me down the line of her nose like she'd love for me to drop to my knees and kiss her purple shoes. My life has never been on my terms. I stand, wrap my veil around my face, then gather her quills off the ground and lump them on the desk, rearranging them in order of size, just the way she likes. And I refuse to accept this as living. I grab my bag and turn, moving toward the door. I didn't say you could leave, Rave. Drag your nails down my rune again. I shrug. See if I care. I slam the door on my way out. Diary entry. Elowin Nevan. Age 9 phases. 5,030 phases after stone. Hadion leaves early next cycle to try and steal his own moonplume egg. He has to slay there and spend many slumbers in snow huts on the way, even though it's dangerous beyond Arithia's walls. Seems a bit silly to me, since Poppy's moonplume could carry him there so fast. But Hadion keeps saying that's how it's always been done, that he wants to prove himself. I don't think Mommy and Poppy want him to prove anything because I overheard them beg him not to go. Not that it worked. This Aurora fall, Hadion smiled big and made lots of jokes while I was helping him fold his clothes and tuck them into his bag, but I can tell he's scared. I can tell because he gave me 3 butterberry chews from the jar he keeps beside his pallet. Normally, he never gives me more than 1 at a time because he says they'll give me a bellyache, which is a lie. I ate all 3 and my belly feels fine. Poppy said it's really hard to get a moonplume egg, that you have to go to Netherin, the place where it's too cold for almost everything else to grow or breathe, and climb really high ice towers without being seen. That you have to steal the egg from a mommy moonplume's nest, then get back down the tower fast and quiet. My brother's big, and he makes lots of noise all the time. He doesn't know how to breathe soft or make his boots not crunch in the snow. Even his voice is rough and coarse like grain. He doesn't hear any of the elemental songs. Maybe those butterberry chews do give you a bellyache after all, because I don't feel so good anymore. I don't think my brother's coming home from Netherin. Rave. Chapter 10. Slamming the door shut on the curly quill, I charge west through the rowdy ditch now packed full of merchant carts. Folk flocking to claim the cheapest bushels of vegetables they can barter. I'd planned to stop for a cinder cream pastry from one of my favorite merchants on the way home, but after having all of Sareem's purple-toned trash stuffed down my throat, I've lost the urge. A chorus of panicked gasps has me pausing, gaze whipping around, following a sea of upturned stares. My pulse scatters at the sight of an adult molten maw gliding almost close enough to rip a ballista off the wall with its massive talons. A gust of wind slams down with the might of its magnificent wings, almost unveiling me. Chest expanding, it lengthens its neck, cranks its maw, and paints the sky in a plume of flame that pours enough heat into the ditch to turn the snow slushy. Folks scream, dashing for cover beneath sky bridges that are, in all honesty, completely fucking useless. If that beast decided to turn its head and torch us, I doubt a single one of us could do anything to stop it. Dragonflame doesn't abide by the rules of nature. Ignos's language can't deter it from blistering skin, melting flesh and bone, destroying cities. Only a Dagamork can wield Dragonflame, one so bonded with their dragon they can harness its strength and fire, though the connection is more myth than reality. The beast glides toward the Colosseum that's clamped between both lengths of wall like a ghastly, blood-splattered crown. Creators, I mutter, watching the molten maw circle lazily above the massive structure. The feeding bell gongs loud enough that I feel the sound in my marrow, and a haunting hush falls upon the crowd, the air igniting with the frantic thump of beating wings. A thunder of molten maws swarm from every direction, clotting the sky with a riot of ravenous motion, charging for the free meal, their sharp maws pointed toward the Colosseum like a volley of arrows. They converge, snapping at each other, talons slashing, vibrant feathers spraying as they battle for whoever's currently tied to the stake within the structure. An ear-splitting scream, followed by a blood-curdling howl of anguish, echoes into the otherwise silent ditch with eerie precision, almost like someone willed Claude to carry the sound down just to fuck with us, to remind us of the chilling consequences for those who madden the crown. My hands shake with my welling rage, fingers tangling through the folds of my gown, fisting the thick material. I'd be up there right now, screaming for blood in the spectator seats if the one being fed to the beasts were a monster like Tariq Relican. But it won't be. They never are. They're others like me, caught masquerading as nulls. They're folk who speak out against the king, or parents of gifted children who try to keep their young from being forced through the painful screening process required of every offspring, from being shaved, pierced, ripped from their homes in exchange for the crown's prescription bucket of bloodstone, gratitude for their great contribution to the Fade's swelling militia. A paltry bandage for a wounded heart. The searing scream is snipped to the tune of splitting wood, and my guts plummet so fast I'm struck with the urge to vomit. A victorious molten maw shoves from the Colosseum, churns its feathered wings, and heaves into the sky. Blood leaks from its honed mouth as the beautiful, monstrous creature glides west, a sea of heads turning to watch it sail along the wall. All the oxygen wicks from my lungs. In that direction, the wall eventually dips, half swallowed by the molten maw's spawning grounds, Boggith. Whenever they fly west with fresh meat, there's only one place the victim is going to end up. Spat out in a nest, fed to the dragon's young. Live prey. I shiver from the base of my neck all the way to the tips of my toes, my gaze coasting across the silent crowd, most staring skyward through wide eyes, their mouths pinched shut as if under lock and key. Apparently, the Kingdom of the Fade used to be a creator's blessed place to live, where children's giggles echoed through the ditch, where the wispy watercolor sky inspired an era of music and arts. Then our current king was sworn in, caring only for his military might. I'd like to have seen Gore back then, when the kingdom was in its prime. Would like to have experienced the reality that was colorful to the core, not just on the outside. I think that's the living Fallon was referring to. Not this. This can't be it. I swallowed the rage boiling up my throat, certain there's enough anger inside me to incinerate this city in a single blow of breath. Even so, I force myself to continue forward, ignoring the feral urge to stalk to the city hutch, hire a carter, and fly west to Drelgod, to where King Kadok currently resides, overseeing his militia. Only a fool would believe I could get close enough to kill him without a fierce amount of backup, the tri-beaded male constantly guarded by dual-beaded elementals and his vicious dragon, making my anger useless. At least until the Elding decides to stop clipping leaves off this malignant tree and start hacking at its roots. I take a zigzag path up the ditch's lofty interior, scaling 31 stories, scanning my surroundings as I cross a crumbling sky bridge and step onto the side of the wall that looks out upon the shade. I skulk down a rough-hewn wind tunnel that reminds me of a choking throat, the ground etched in bands of runes that trigger all sorts of terrible responses for anyone other than myself or Essie. The immediate urge to shit themselves, the sudden loss of vision, like they fell headfirst into the shade's inky sky. And my personal favorite, the unnerving belief that a molten maw just stuffed its beak down this very tunnel and is trying to pluck them out like a bug in a hole. I pause by what looks very much like a rubbish chute for the velvet trog and unlace my bodice, revealing a fadestone brown skin suit that's snug against my form and much easier to climb in. Bundling my veil, boots, bodice, and supply bag within the folds of my skirt, I post the package, watching it shoot diagonally down, then disappear from sight. Most prefer to make their homes on the other side of the wall, where sunlight shafts through colorful windows and fills rooms with warmth, where folk can line their sills with potted vegetables that thrive in its constant flow. Not me. I like the cold, and I can't keep a plant alive to save myself. Though none of that holds a candle to the reason why I chose the brisk, quiet side with the dusky vista. Wind toys with my hair as I stop at the end of the tunnel with my toes hanging over the edge, looking out upon the snow-covered plains that stretch toward the south. The clouds have almost entirely cleared, allowing me an uninhibited view of the bruised horizon pocked with moons cast amongst a bed of distant stars. Closer are the vibrant balls of fallen molten maws, as if someone took the colorful clouds of the fade, shredded them, then packed them into compact orbs and tossed them skyward. You can see the outline of their massive, majestic wings bound around them like feathered fans. The lanky plumes of their tails that sometimes fail to tuck in before the dying dragon solidifies, looking like flicks of paint. Much farther in the distance are rounds of pearl, iridescent, and gray spilling shards of moonplume light, radiant bruises smudged against the otherwise dark horizon. There's something poetic about looking up and seeing that which has passed. A soft launch into grief for those who linger below. If I could ball myself up like a moon plume and nestle amongst the stars when I know my time has come, I would. Not that I think many would seek me out, but I'd die knowing I left something bright behind in this beautiful world sketched in so many shades of ugly. I also like the idea of being able to fall from the sky and squash somebody if they piss me off. I'd aim myself at the Fade King and obliterate him in a heartbeat for doing such a shit job of keeping his kingdom together. Petty, but justified. I seek out the small silver moon of an adolescent moon plume that's drawn my eye since I first looked upon the tombstone-laden sky, pulling my lungs full of crisp air, a true, untarnished smile stretching across my face. Many called that particular moon Haze Perch. It's certainly not the largest, nor is it the brightest, nor the most magnificent to look upon. But for whatever reason, I can't imagine not being able to open my eyes each aurora rise, look out past the ever-vibrant clouds in this part of the world, and see that little wonky moon with the malformed wing. Essie once asked me if I wanted to know its story. I smiled and shook my head. Heartbreak has a tone that echoes through the ages, and her voice was laden with it. I don't want to look at my favorite moon and think of things that hurt. I want to look at that small moon plume and imagine it had a beautiful life, full of happy things that make your heart heavy with love. Perhaps that makes me a coward, but I have to pinch my smiles from somewhere. And that moon, it never fails to give me exactly that. A smile. Rave. Chapter 11. I drop from the wind tunnel's mouth, using the abundance of cracks and divots to latch myself to the side of the wall and scale downward, threatened by a fringe of rock shards that hug the base of the wall below. The hungry promise of a swift and brutal death that hasn't yet been able to chomp down on me. Or Essie. Thankfully. Gripping a jutting piece of stone, I transfer my other hand to the space beside it, then drop before what appears to be more flat wall, a perfect runed illusion. I swing through what's actually a large, ever-open window into a snuggle of slightly warmer air, rich with the smell of something rich, buttery, freshly baked. I land in a crouch, my appetite returning with a salivating vengeance. Yum! Is that butterman loaf? Essie says, slouched over a seeing scope at our small feasting table laden with tools, tinctures, and metal pots, scratching at whatever's beneath the scope with one of her etching sticks. I could smell the blood on your boots the moment they shot down the chute. Reaching the table, I pinch a finger of loaf from her plate and stuff it in my mouth, groaning through my first bit of sustenance since I set out last Aurora fall. The dense pillow of savory goodness drenched in melted butter, slathered in a sweet layer of bogsberry preserve. I smile. I love bogsberry preserve. Essie doesn't, meaning she left this piece specifically for me, knowing I'd be ravenous the moment I swung in the window. Not that she'd admit to it. Not that I'd want her to. She pretends not to worry about me. I pretend not to worry about her. We coexist in parallel with zero expectations, bar the odd supply list and the fancy things she makes for me, and it works blissfully. Perfectly. I wouldn't change a thing. Things got messy, I say through my mouthful, moving into our rough-hewn kitchenette. I lift a cloth on the freshly baked loaf and slice off a fat chunk, topping it with a scrape of butter and a dollop of preserve. Cranking open the icebox, I root around for a bulb of bright green fruit, slicing it into segments I pile on my plate. Want some Goro? They're not ripe. I spin with the plate balanced in my hand. Sure they are. The butt end goes yellow when they're ripe. She peers up from her task, red brows almost bumping off her pretty, freckle-dusted face. That one will blow your tongue off. I stuff a pale shard in my mouth, and my face screws up as I choke on the zesty tang. They're not ripe, I sputter, spitting it into the trash bowl. Essie chuckles under her breath, then tucks her head back down, peering through her looking glass and getting back to whatever she's doing. I slide my fruit to the side and focus on the loaf while watching her work, my gaze shifting from the graceful, deft movements of her fingers to her delicate features. Tawny eyes, nose slightly upturned at the end. A null clip is cut from the tip of her left ear that's a little longer than mine and with more of a backward tilt, giving her this hypnotic, ethereal visage. Coils of hair hang well past her hips like a thick, ruddy cape that matches the metallic specks in her eyes. Such a unique shade of red I've never seen before. The only splash of color that brightens her appearance. Ever. I take another deep bite of loaf, thinking back to the day she moved in. I told her she could do whatever she wanted to the previously sparse decor. Naturally, our shared living space is now the same color as her entire wardrobe. Black. The rough kitchen counters, the jagged ceiling, the fibrous rug that covers the uneven floor. Even our plump, heavily cushioned cedar by the window, big enough to fit 3 despite the fact that we never have visitors. By choice. My gaze lifts to the window specially ruined by Essie to ward off intruders, remembering the slumber I woke to her standing over me in the midst of one of her episodes, black smudged beneath her haunted stare as she waved a blade about, screaming at me to fill a cup with my blood. Now that it was a matter of life or death. The end result? An entrance that all but murders intruders. Stroke of genius. "This is delicious, Essie. Thank you," I say, taking another bite.
"Of course. Glad you like it."
Understatement. She knows her butterman loaf is my favorite. No idea what she puts in it, but damn, it's good. "What are you working on?"
"A diamond cap for your tooth,"
she says, etching away.
"I've been trying to find an ore dense enough to withstand these fiddly runes. Freak accident, but I discovered diamond works. Oh!"
Hand poised, she flashes me a wide-eyed glance that's so full of life it renders me breathless, no doubt high on whatever thought just threaded through her spectacular mind.
"Did you get my lark?"
"Mm-hmm." I tuck my hair behind my ears and make for the oddly shaped stone basin that caught all the bits I pushed through the chute earlier. I got blood on it, but did my best. I set the plate aside to rummage through my belongings. "What does the diamond crown do?"
"Emits an invisible, impenetrable barrier around your head and chest without cutting you in half."
Hand stilling, I look over my shoulder at her. "Without cutting me in half? You mean my body?" She nods so fast her hair's a sanguine churn.
"Took me a bit to figure that out. Promise it's good now, though."
"Right." "Glad you're thorough," I say, gripping the bag.
"Always. It's almost done. A few fine runes with that new etching stick and it'll be ready to activate. Figured it's a good time to attach it since Rex Zaros is hunting you."
"See, you've been reading my messages again." She shrugs, adjusting the scope of her looking glass.
"It flew through the window after you left, bumped against the sill until its nose was squished. I put it out of its misery by unfolding it."
"And reading it."
My eyes slipped.
They have a habit of doing that. I shake my head, sliding the bag across the table for her to rummage through. Flip side of using so much blood in the active runes etched around the window, the parchment larks sometimes think the window is, well, us. Ergo, the source of Sereem's eternal frustration whenever she can't get a hold of me. Essie pulls her head from the bag, her face a tad paler.
"No spangle poo?"
I blink at her. "I'm sorry, what?"
"From Yescorn, the Undercity librarian. He's got a pet spangle. Is it in your pocket? Please tell me it's in your pocket."
"There's no shit in my pocket, Essie. Why do you need spangle poo?" She opens her mouth to speak, but I swiftly cut her off. "Remember, my brain's not as big as yours. If you start talking about biophysics, I'll perish." She opens her mouth again, closes it, seems to think for a bit, then starts to talk.
"The stone they eat is rich with a special ore that's otherwise hard to find because it forms in minuscule drops that never grow larger than a pinhead. It doesn't break down in their digestive tract, so it's the most effective way to gather it. It's a creamy color, and it melts at a much lower temperature than most other ores, making it the perfect adhesive for binding ruined caps to your teeth."
"You're joking." Her brows crush together.
"For the first time in my life?"
All the warmth drains from my face, my hand whipping out to steady myself against the table. "That's what you used to bind the other activation cap to my tooth?" She nods.
"Spangle shit?" "I rinsed the actual feces off, then sterilized the ore, but yes, it had been shat."
Creators. I shove my tongue to the right side of my mouth, feeling around said cap. "Let's file that under things Rave doesn't need to know," I mutter, making for the cabinet where I pull out a mug. Ever.
"Noted. I
glance back to see her shuffling in her seat, scratching at the back of her head.
Given Rex's renowned accolades, I was hoping to get it attached."
There's no rush. With this new, rather revolting information, the least amount of rush ever.
"What if he targets you?"
I lift the jug of filtered water from our icebox, filling my mug. I've been instructed to lie low, and we both know Rec can't get to me here. The only way we'll clash is if I accidentally run into him on my way to pick up my handsaw and accidentally slit his throat, accidentally going against Sareem's direct orders, and accidentally saving the life of one of my comrades. The only upside to being indispensable, I'm almost certain Sareem won't fatally maim me for the transgression. Just rough me up until she feels like she's got control again. The usual shit. Essie's chair grinds against the floor as I gulp my belly full of water, draining the mug before I place it in the basin and grab a band off the counter, using it to pull my heavy hair back into a high updo. The silence grows prickly and needles me from behind. I turn. Essie's no longer facing her project. She's facing me, hands on her knees, eyes wide and brimming with worry. A look that impales me through the chest so hard I feel it poke out the other side. "Stop," I growl. "Don't look at me like that." Why is she looking at me like that? Her eyes gloss over with a sheen of sadness that's so much worse. "Rave, I can't lose you." "We don't do this, Essie. We work just fine the way we are. Don't break something that's not broken." Her brows pinch together as she opens her mouth, but nothing comes out, like the words are too big to wrestle free. Good. They should stay in. I don't want her to tell me she's worried, that she cares. I don't want to say those same words back to her. The folk I care about die. The point is moot, anyway. I spin, rinsing my mug and plate in the basin, eyes firmly cast on the task. I can't go to the Undercity until I receive a lark signaling the all clear. I dry both bits of crockery, put them away, then move to the trough and gather my things. I'm exhausted. I'll get these stupid feathers off my lashes, catch some rest, then collect your spangle shit once I receive a lark from Sareem. Deal? She doesn't answer. When the stretch of silence grows too loud, I spin, looking into her big, tear-filled eyes. Shit. Deal, Essie? Lips pinched into a thin line, she nods, the slow beat of a reluctant agreement. I make for the trapdoor that leads to my suite and lift the hatch, stilling halfway down the steps when Essie's words impale me like a blade thrown between my ribs, wedging deep. "I don't like Sareem any more than you do, but for once, I think you should listen to her. Please, Rave, I need—" She sighs, pausing before she throws another verbal dagger, this one knocking the breath right out of me. "You're the only family I have." I squeeze my lips so tight together I'm surprised they don't fuse. Essie's broken. Actually, this entire cycle's broken. I need to close the cover on it and flip a new one, a normal one, where folks stop voicing their concerns for my well-being and calling me family. I don't get nice things like that without a price tag too heavy for me to pay. Please don't go to the Undercity without me. You know I hate it when you go down there alone. I step out of her line of sight, swinging the trapdoor back into place with a heavy clunk. My suite is sparse compared to the rest of our living space, the only decoration aside from a single piece of wall art being the moons I've drawn upon my otherwise unpainted ceiling with bits of coal. Essie's never asked why, though by the way this day is going, it wouldn't surprise me if she charged down here and dumped the question at my feet like a steaming pile of spangle shit. Damn it, I mutter, lumping my stuff on the ground. I release a heavy sigh, casting my low-lidded stare on my twill pallet stretched across the ground by the large window that dominates my southern wall. No stuffy blankets or pillows, just comfortable space to curl up and pass out. Something I want to do right now, but if I don't pick these feathers off, I'll wake up looking like a scraggly molten maw mid-molt, missing sprigs of my lashes. Been there, done that. Don't be lazy, Rave. Deal with your shit. I scoop my things off the floor again and move through to my dressing space tucked behind the back wall, hanging my gown, pulling my daggers free from all the hidden compartments like plucking a bird of its plumage. I shelve them all except the one I keep strapped to my thigh, checking my skin suit for blood. Finding none, I decide it's fine to sleep in and hone the dregs of my energy into scrubbing my boots, removing the damn feathers, and taking care of my business, battling through a yawn as I step back into my sleep suite. I pause before a flat piece of stone hanging on the wall, carved to look like a nesting moon plume. Easing it aside, I reach into the hole behind, retrieve a small wooden box that I carry to my pallet, placing it beside the window. The pane of glass is stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a view of the fade's gradual smudge into the distant shade, framed by frosty runes that make the window look like stone from the other side. Another one of Essie's clever adaptations. Seeking that wonky moon in the distance, I see the rising aurora tangled around it like the frayed threads of a silver gown unraveled by the handsy wind. A soft smile fills my cheeks, despite this weight settling in my chest, like something sitting on me. Something that feels a bit like regret. My smile falls. Essie called me family, and I walked away. After everything she's been through, I walked away. What the fuck is wrong with me? How can I look at that moon with so much love in my heart? Love that ricochets off my ribs every time I look at Essie. Stupid question. I know exactly what's wrong with me. Loving that moon feels safe. Moonfalls are so rare it'll likely always be there, accepting my quiet adoration. Loving Essie, it makes me feel like I'm handling something fragile that'll break apart in my hands if I tighten my grip even the slightest bit. Sighing, I lift the lid on my small box. Nee bats her plain parchment wings and rises from the hollow, fluttering around me in a churn of giddy motion, nuzzling my face, shoulder, neck. She tries to wiggle into my ear, making it impossible not to smile. Careful not to hurt yourself, I murmur, gently nudging her away from my face and easing her toward the rest of the room so she can stretch her little wings. She does a few lofty loops, then tucks her head and plummets. Too fast, too far away. She collides with the floor beak first, and I flinch. Fuck. I scramble up and dash to her, swooping her into my palm. Nee, I really wish you'd stop doing this. She jerks, flipping onto her back, bearing the 3 beautifully scrawled letters visible on her abdomen, the rest of her message tucked within the darts of her streamlined body. N-E-E. I cut her an incredulous glare, unimpressed by the not-so-subtle nudge for me to unfold her. You know, of all the tricks you use to get me to read you, this is my least favorite, I mutter, waiting for her to move again, to dart back into the air and burn off all the energy she's built up while I've been out. Nothing. I'm serious. I jiggle my hand. You look dead. Stop it. Still, she doesn't move. I blow on her. Again. Again. My heart crimps. Nee. She waggles her parchment tail, and all the breath shoves from my lungs as prickly relief packs me full. I shake my head, rubbing my sternum. This is called rewarding bad behavior, I grouse, gently unfolding her crushed beak, head, tail, wings, then body, bearing her message that's more than 5 phases old. I need you. 3 small words I'm certain were never meant for me. Not that it stopped me reading them again and again. I devour the delicate sweep of each tailored letter, brushing the pad of my thumb across them like a knee belly scratch as I recall the moment she came to me. She must have gotten lost on her journey to whoever she was intended for, instead nuzzling into the crook of my neck like she was seeking comfort from a storm. I'd opened her, read her message, and realized how important she was. Come from somebody who was not okay, though they perhaps didn't know how to say it aloud. I'd folded her up and blown her back to the sky, asking Claude to carry her high into the currents so she could recalibrate and head in the right direction, find the one she was intended for. The next rise, I'd woken to her resting in my palm, a tear in her wing and a very squished nose, like she'd battled against Claude's currents and won. Hard to part with her after that. I sweep my thumb over those 3 words again, then gently fold her back up, flattening her beak crimp and checking that her rip hasn't gotten any bigger. She bursts from my hand in a flutter of motion and bats about the room like she's burning off a furnace full of energy. If you're not more careful, I'll pack the room with down feathers, I warn, and she flips through the air, swooping toward me in a wobbly glide, dipping into the crook of my neck where she nuzzles in. I settle my hand atop her and rock until she stops wiggling, my thoughts drifting back to Essie, to the jarring way she looked at me through those big eyes glazed with too much. Sighing, I make for my pallet, then cast my stare to the sky outside. Fallon once told me that as a youngling, she used to lie on her back and wish upon the moons, wishes that would sometimes come true. Magic, she called it. I've never believed in things that make no sense to me, aside from Essie's magnificence. But perhaps I should start wishing on the moon I love so much. Ask it to find a way to replace my heart with a soft and squishy one, so I never have to see Essie's eyes flood with sadness again. Creators, I'm an asshole. I curl up on my side, snuggling knee, looking at Hayes' perch while humming the gentle tune that always clears my mind, no matter how loud the world seems. Diary entry. Eloin Nevon. Age 9 phases. 5,030,000